What is up, RotoGrinders? Start 2.5 plus hours NFL DFS. It is back. Super excited. Week 1, obviously, taking you all straight up the lock. I'm excited to work with Kirkwood. I've not worked with Kirkwood since his new child. Kirkwood, how are things in your world? Hopefully you're getting enough sleep. Good to see you. We'll talk to Bobby in a second. But Kirkwood, what's up? How are things?
I can't lie. I'm completely stressed. I'm walking around like a zombie, like with no sleep. I'm still haven't, figured everything out here. But, because we have football season and UFC, we have baseball, everything's still cranking. So anyway, we got I'm ready for NFL now. We've got Bobby here to carry the load for me because Bobby and I talk NFL all the time. We do our pod, which I think was great with JSU is back. We got the band back together for the Tournament Takes pod. But yeah, man, I'm psyched for NFL. The only thing I want to say to you, Dean, is that you were making the Dylan rankings and an egregious oversight to not have my newborn who I happened to take on his first trip to New Hampshire yesterday to see the New Hampshire border, just so I could play some bets. I wanted to get a picture of him by the sign, "Welcome to New Hampshire," but then I would have had to pull over on the highway, so we didn't do that. But anyway, let's go. It's NFL. Let's go.
To be fair, your child is 14 days old, and I'm sure he's been exceptional in his 14 days. But he's only accomplished so much, to make the crack the Dylan rankings. You got to do more than just peeing and pooping, and I'm sure he's going to be spectacular going forward. At some point, he'll crack those rankings.
I mean, he's a good-looking baby, and I'm not saying that. Not just saying that. Like everybody says that this one is a good-looking baby. I don't have much faith that he'll be good-looking after that once he grows up a little bit. But as far as right now, he's a good-looking baby.
He's peaking at 1. Good for him. Congratulations again. Welcome, Bobby Gomes, the newest member here at RotoGrinders, former $1 million winner in the football sphere. Bobby, good to have you. We should mention, by the way, 2.5 plus hours. Following us, we got Erik Beimfohr, who's going to be talking. I don't think he's going to be focusing on best ball. I think he'll be talking NFL DFS, as well as Mr. Tuttle. Tim, TastefulTides, Brit Devine, STL Cards. Thank you all straight at the lock as well. What's up, chat? Kindly hit that like button. Do subscribe. Turn on those notifications. I'm going to have my eye on the chat as well. So if you guys happen to be throwing out things pertaining to the conversation, especially, I'll do my best to bring it into the conversation, talking today's slate. Bobby, welcome. Tell the people they don't know, what is your sort of general I know you want a Millionaire Maker, so I guess you play the Millionaire Maker. When you do analysis, are you talking about large field stuff, single entry stuff, 3-entry max? What do you focus on?
I'm more large field, but I kind of build out, so I'll figure out the what I think is going to be the cash game lineup, and then kind of leverage it within GPP plays, which I think is pretty relevant this week with pricing that's relatively soft and chalk that is safety is kind of shaky due to basically opportunity costs at the majority of positions. So happy to jump on here and talk to you. Dean, you're my girlfriend's favorite DFS host for the last 8 years. Yeah, so it's nice to be on. I think I'm scoring some brownie points here, but it's nice to be on with you guys. And Kirky, my boy, Boston guy, live pretty close to each other, so it's nice to be on the show with you as well.
It's good that we can. Dean hates Boston fans, Bobby, so he hates them.
I don't.
Yes, he does. He talks so much trash, so it's good to finally have some backup here.
It's just now I'm falling down in his girlfriend's power rankings. No, that's not true. I don't. That's such a weird thing to say that I hate Boston fans. What a blanket statement. And I think it's interesting.
I'll pull the Twitter receipts later, but
I mean they have a history, but let's not. We only have 50 minutes before I yield. We only have so much we can talk about. Hey, Kirkwood, this is the Jon Snow slate, right? This is we know nothing. We like to pretend like we know everything, but we're kind of sort of somewhat going in blind. There's obviously a couple huge totals. Most of them are in the late slate. 9 games to start, 4 later. The KC game, the San Diego game, the LA Chargers game. We'll be talking about those plenty. Your general thoughts before we kind of dive in and talk about the slate, position by position for favorite quarterbacks, yada, yada, yada. And we'll do our stacks as well. And again, anything that the chat wants us to talk about, happy to do so. I want to bring that into the conversation. But give me your overview because, again, Kirkwood, do you think you know everything? Are you one of those people you feel like you got to figure it out? Because we're going to look back in 5 weeks and say, man, we knew nothing. We kind of screwed this up.
About this week?
Well, yeah, just like NFL, week one, always. There's always some big surprises. We saw.
Yeah, I know nothing. Okay. What I know is that I know we got to embrace some variance today. We got to, people are going to be, there's a lot of people who are probably going to be talking Romeo Doubs rookie in cash this week. So, we always start out hot. What could go wrong? Michael Pittman chalk. What could go wrong? There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong. So it's all about embracing the wrong this week, in my opinion.
Yeah, the Dobbs thing is because he's 3K on DK and he just sort of makes stuff work. And Pittman over there is obviously super cheap as well. And the builds are kind of different and just kind of messing around DK and FanDuel. You're going to like your DraftKings lineups more. Like DraftKings just sort of made it easier. It's almost kind of sort of hard to make a bad DraftKings lineup. I was trying to mess it around, legitimate, like a real lineup, not just picking the worst players intentionally. Do you find that, Bobby, as far as making lineups today, or is that just me? Like the DK, everybody's just kind of like 10, 15% off. It's a sale. It's week one. They want people to love their lineups. FanDuel just a little bit trickier, which I think I like the cap being kind of pushed a little bit.
Yeah, so for pricing on DK, like this is traditional for week one, soft pricing. I think it's interesting for tournaments because, everyone can build whatever team they want, but there's also within that 5 to 6K range of the running back, wide receiver, and tight end position, I think the ceiling upside is pretty high for most of those, just because pricing is soft, right? A lot of these guys are going to be like 500 to 1,000 more. So it makes some of this chalk that we would normally play at these prices, just you have to question it a little bit, kind of lean into the ambiguity. And that's what I kind of like about week one, right? Like we don't know everything.
All right. Keeping an eye on chat. I'm not sure what's going on with Ryan, but he's having us up a good time. What's up, Ryan? What's everybody else? Kindly hit that like button, do subscribe, turn on those notifications, join the conversation as well. I'm going to drop Chief Meteorologist Kevin Roth. He has the weather report today. There is weather in the NFL, and there's one place that looks relatively pretty dicey. Orange in Chicago, for what it's worth. Not the most appealing game from a DFS perspective, probably more defensively. Two quarterbacks that we like, going forward, I think, but not necessarily for today. I know Derek Carty, the Blitz. Support Derek Carty in the Blitz. It's very useful. It's helpful. In his game level factors, he's got that game, the San Francisco-Chicago game, basically the worst when it comes to actual plays. I think it's right in front of New England and Miami. Pace matters. The more plays, the more chance for, fantasy goodness. Number one on the board, for what it's worth, is LA and the Chargers. No surprise there. Green Bay, Minnesota, right there as well. KC, Arizona, not too far behind. Bobby, you have just an overall perspective or how you're building lineups today. Me, I'm really spread out. I'm just kind of all over the place, and I don't have a lot of stands, which I don't know. You're probably supposed to have some, and I'm sure I will eventually. My lineups are not finalized for FanDuel and DK just yet. I was kind of messing with the Yahoo stuff. Probably going to max out their big contest over there after the show. What's your general process? Because I'm just sort of spread out, and I think there's a lot of good stuff, but nothing that I absolutely have to have.
Yeah, exactly. Right. What I kind of touched on within the 5 to 6K range from running back, wide receiver, tight end, I think the ceilings are very high, and that's something that really stood out to me. So a lot of this chalk, I'm not playing as much of it as I thought I would probably earlier in the week as stuff is kind of broke down. I'm going to lean into the ambiguity a little bit. I know I just reiterating that again, but I think that's super important in week one.
By the way, Dobbins not expected to play, for what it's worth. Actives and inactives come out an hour and a half before the game, so we'll get the 1 o'clock ones at 11:30. The Beimfohr, of course, will cover that, and then you'll get the 4:30 ones at about, well, depending on what time the kickoff is, 2:45-ish, more or less. Ertz seems to be likely to play, for what it's worth. Yesterday didn't seem terribly promising. Looks like he's on track to give it a go. They certainly can use him there in Arizona with the absence of Kirk, the absence of Hopkins. No Kittle, or unlikely Kittle, versus the Bears today, for what it's worth. Got anything else, Kirkwood, that you want to say as far as the slate, or you just want to dive in and talk about some quarterbacks where, it's pretty congested. It's pretty flat. The number one guy, the cash game guy, is probably going to be Jalen Hurts. In a dome, more weapons, good matchup. He's got legs. You tell me. I don't know. Are you even playing cash games today? You're probably not playing cash games, are you?
All right. So this is what I'm doing. So I play cash on Yahoo. because I play everything on Yahoo. I was behind the 8 ball this week because I just had so much stuff going on. So I'm taking this week kind of light. I'm heavy on Yahoo. I've got I maxed the $5 on DK just for now. I was making a cash lineup all night, but I couldn't decide on one, so I didn't slam it at anything yet. But I mean, to me, it's pretty hard to make a cash lineup on DraftKings. That's like a contrarian take because I don't feel comfortable with Dobbs. I don't feel comfortable with Randall Cobb. I don't feel comfortable with Dotson. These, one guy is is older than Head Chopper out there, and then the other guys the other guys are just rookies. So, and, we never know. We see preseason. Yes, we get coach speak, but coaches lie all the time. So some of these rookies are going to have limited snaps. Some of these rookies are going to make one mistake on a route and they're going to get yanked because they make a point. These coaches do. So there's a lot that can go wrong. There's a lot that can go right because they're 3K, right? And maybe they are the man. But so I have a hot take in cash. In order to make everything all work for me this week, I had to go dumpster diving down to a guy like Isaiah Likely that we'll talk about, which is just not a cash play because he has zero floor whatsoever. But he makes my lineup so beautiful that I might just end up doing it. But we'll get to there. But let's talk QBs. I mean, Jalen Hurts, you're right, is the most popular. I mean, he's ridiculous, right? He brings first of all, he's got a lot of new weapon, or great new weapon, AJ Brown. Goddard is healthy. Devontae Smith is a stud. Got rid of a bunch of those guys, that were kind of dead weight like Rager. And they're in a dome against Detroit. And he brings a ton of rushing upside. They have an incredible offensive line, a huge offensive line, defensive line mismatch. Detroit was 27th in DVOA versus the pass. When Hurts played in games of totals of 48 or higher, which was 14 games, he averaged over 25 fantasy points a game. So I got nothing bad to say about Hurts, but we also have some other great, options right behind him. We've got Mahomes, right, that people don't really want to play because of he doesn't rush a bunch, but he gets rushing touchdowns here and there, and he'll run a little bit. Yeah, he can move. It's not like Head Chopper out there. So then there's guys like Justin Herbert, who's not going to get a lot of. Now, the guy that a lot of people are going to in cash, I know the Blitz is spitting this one out, is Derek Carr. So I'd be interested to hear your guys' take on Derek Carr. But then we got Lamar, who's like getting overlooked, and it's the Jets, and it's also Dobbins is not going to play, right? Like I wasn't expecting him. So I mean that just should make his rushing upside even greater in this one, right? Like, so it should be all Lamar rushing, and it's the Jets. Now the Jets have a better defense this year, and not a lot of people are talking about that, at least that I've noticed. It's not the same old Jets defense, but there's a lot of ways to go. So I'm interested to get Bobby and your takes on these guys.
Ownership wise, we got 13% on Hurts on DK. That's the biggest number. Mahomes at 9. Carr is at 8. He is 5'9". We live in the salary cap, and they're probably going to be in a shootout with the Chargers. Their defense is vulnerable, and I know Cardi's been talking about it all week as far as Derek Carr's passing prop was like 260-ish or something like that. And I think the Blitz has him for over 300 passing yards. And of course, those 3 points are useful as well as far as hitting the bonus. I've made one cash lineup on DK. I typically, I'm that guy who will make one, like 2 or 3. I'll split them up. And I do like a 2v2s and 3v3s. And I don't think it's the worst idea to get the Carr if it kind of opens things up. And but currently right now, my guy is Hurts because like, I'm just with the field on this. And like, it's so, you're right, by the way, as far as cash games on DK, because it's going to be like a 2v2 and a 3v3 against everybody else. And it's all pretty good. And you kind of have to play Pittman. You have to play McCaffrey, and it's like, okay, now it's what, 3v3 now at this point. And I don't know how. Yeah,
sorry to interrupt, but Bobby, what are your feelings about guys who play multiple lineups in cash?
I would just be playing one lineup in cash.
Just gutless, right? Like gutless. Right? That's what comes to my mind. Gutless.
It's a little too condom.
There's cash players, and then there's people who play multiple lineups in cash.
Worse than Boston fans.
Sure. Debatable.
No, I get it. I know. Whatever sort of disrespect you want to throw my way, I deserve it. You really should take a stand, but I'm apprehensive, and I don't. And it's also because, like, you're right. I don't feel great about having 100% Dobbs in cash on DK, which is where I'm currently at, and I want to try to get away from that because the floor on him is low for sure. Bobby, I want to bring you in as far as quarterback again. Hurts, top guy. That's the same deal on FanDuel as well. We talk about DK specifically. Hurts. At least, let me double check. Yeah, Hurts at 15%. Mahomes at 11. Herbert around 9 or 8. He's got a little bit of legs, but he could get it done with the arm as well. Mostly, Lamar playing for that contract, or I guess he didn't get it done, and the deadline's over. He's his own agent. He's going to have a show me season, we imagine. But 7-8% against the Jets. Murray, you'd assume a bit of a shootout. Hopefully, Arizona can keep up with KC today. There's a lot of good options here, Bobby. How are you? Are you thinning them out? Are you going well over? Or are you going to be like, give me 15, 20% of each of these guys and we'll figure it out?
I'm not a 10% of everyone guy, Dean. That's one thing about me. That, the cash game QBs hurts. I usually X the cash game QB, not because QB ownership gets spread out, but it's just because the stack with Hurts would, like, if I went Hurts, AJ Brown, like, we're picking up a good chunk of ownership in that situation, or Hurts Goddard. I like going up to Lamar. I think Lamar's really incentivized just to play well this season, going against the Jets. I know it's a contrarian take. I think a lot of people are going to be on Mahomes. They're going to be on Kyler. I like Lamar. I like Herbert on the high end. I like Burrow. I think those guys situationally give you good leverage within the slate. And then on the low end, Derek Carr and Tua are the guys that I'm kind of targeting. Those will be the 5 QBs I'm playing today.
Let's see. Talking about Mr. 10%, they're making fun of me now in chat. Fair enough. Fields is probably not somebody I'm getting to. Talking about in chat. Like, I don't like that line. I don't like his weapons. I don't like the weather. I don't like the pace of that game. But besides that, you got to take on Fields. I guess he's not in your pool there, Bobby. But how about yourself, Kirkwood? Fields, anybody else that's worth acknowledging as far as the quarterbacks? You mentioned it sounds like one of your favorite cheapies is Carr. I at least like the weaponry for Winston. I'm not really sure what we're going to get, with I'm forgetting his name for some reason. He hasn't played football in so long for New Orleans. The wide receiver, Michael Thomas. Just drawing an absolute blank. It's a potential cheapie. I don't hate Winston. We've seen Winston put up big numbers in the past, more so on Tampa, obviously. What do you have there, Kirkwood, as far as cheapies at quarterback? Is your favorite cheapie Carr?
No, it's. I mean, I don't mind Derek Carr. The problem is Derek Carr has always been a game manager, right? But now we're back to he's got a full allotment of weapons, so it's going to be interesting to see. I like the idea of Carr. I'm a little bit worried about him, but he's 5,900, so I think it's fine. Fields, I'm out on, at least at this point. I mean, for Millie Maker, sure. I mean, obviously you can play him with Darnell Mooney, but I don't see the need to go there. I mean, we've got the cream of the crop all here, and we can fit them. My favorite cheap guy is Daniel Jones.
Oh, wow.
Everybody's forgot about him, right? But, like, what does Saquon do best? Well, he's best in the passing game, right, with Jones. They also have made comments that they're going to, like, give Daniel Jones the Josh Allen treatment, and he's going to be running a lot more this season. We'll see. Like, comparing Daniel Jones to Josh Allen is pretty funny. But the fact of the matter is he can rush and he can score rushing touchdowns. He's also got, a bunch of decent receiving options when they are healthy. The offense line is a little bit improved, which, isn't the biggest step up because, again, you could throw a head chopper out there on the line and you would improve that line from last season. But anyways, so I really like Daniel Jones. And I don't know. The weapons are, it's interesting if we're going to play like Wardell or Tony or Sterling Shepard is the one that I think is going to step in. He's the one who has the chemistry with him. He's actually averaged when he's been healthy, he's been great. So he's probably the guy for me, but I think for 5K, he's probably the best cheapie.
I don't know who to pair him with, like you said. Like, there's a bunch of dudes, but none of them are like it's a whack-a-mole game, and they're mostly bad. Robinson, the rookie's 3K is another dart you can throw, and you never know what you're gonna get there. Barkley might just catch 10 balls. Like, I suppose you can pair him with Barkley. I suppose you can play him naked as well. Bobby, if you were playing Daniel Jones, who would you pair him with?
Yeah, I think I'd be pairing him with Wandale and Barkley. Just Wandale's in that 3K range if you want to get different. This Tennessee secondary isn't great. Barkley, we seen last year, like Brian Dable offense. Singletary, I think, last 6 weeks of the year was just an absolute great play, just getting targets. I think Barkley's going to be utilized in that fashion. And I like the Colin Jones. Like, I haven't really given it much thought but it adds to the point of, like, a guy like Derrick Henry isn't going to be owned. So if you want run back Derrick Henry there, it gives you some pretty solid leverage. So yeah, I don't hate the Jones call at all.
Let's see. In the chat, they're talking about pairing Pettis with Fields. I don't know if you're playing low ball or not, but that feels like a terrible idea. Lance might get 100 yards rushing. I suppose that's possible. Sure. That's one way he can get there. He runs the touchdown in and gets 100 yards rushing. That's 13, 6, 19 points just right there, TK-wise at least. You don't get that bonus on FanDuel, obviously. Adams and Carr, certainly that's an interesting pairing there, and that's going to be one of the more popular games. Hey, Bobby, you do anything like as far as like the way the games line up today? 9 to start off, 4 later. Set yourself up for some potential pivots. It's no secret, the biggest totals are later. Essentially, the Raiders and the Chargers, 52 total on the board. We got a 54 total with Kansas City, Arizona. The Green Bay, Minnesota game has some pretty clear, like, where the fantasy points are going there. 46.5 point total there. One of the better games on the board, I think. Is there anything you're doing strategy-wise as far as setting yourself up for potential pivots based upon the results in the 1 o'clock games?
Yeah, there's pretty solid late swap equity on the slate. I think with basically the McCaffrey upwards of like 25 to 30%, I think he's going to be owned. In that secondary afternoon hour, the 4 p.m.s, they're very highly totaled. You get guys like Henry, you have Dalvin Cook. They're going to come in a lot lower owned relative to what CMC would be. So I'm leaving myself some late swap equity I'll be under on CMC and probably be able to move myself over within my lineups just in case CMC busts. Or right now I have a good bit of Henry and Dalvin. I don't want to transition to running back too fast, but I think that we're kind of doing it. So
yeah, we should do that. We should talk running backs soon enough. Unless you got anything else, Kirkwood, as far as quarterbacks?
No. So but we never discussed Kyler Murray.
Mention him in passing. Go ahead.
But we never really dug into it. So there's no D-Hop, right? And without Hopkins, he averaged 10 fantasy points less per game last season. They lost Christian Kirk, so they lost Chase Edmonds. They've got James Conner, and he can be utilized in the passing game a little bit, but I'm just not sure. I mean, I don't really feel good about his weapons, but does that add to his rushing, floor? Do you think he's going to take off even more? Is this game going to be competitive?
Yeah.
What are your guys' takes here in this? Is the narrative that this game isn't going to be competitive and Kyler's going to be extremely low owned? I don't know. It's the highest total game on the slate.
Yeah, and Ertz looks like he's trending toward playing now. Looked earlier in the week like he wasn't going to play. AJ Green, he's never going to be younger than he is going to be today. I don't know if he's younger or older than Chop, but he's another guy that's playable. He'll be on the field. Once upon a time, he was a really good receiver.
He's a little bit less. He's not quite as old as Chop, but he's getting there.
What do you got, Bobby, as far as Murray?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I am not. This might be a contrarian take. I am not on these quarterbacks in this game. I'm taking pieces from it, definitely. But what we've seen, historically on week ones, offenses take a little bit to kind of catch up the defenses. This game's going to have a ton of pace, ton of opportunities for defensive plays. I don't hate the defenses. I really like Valdez-Scantling, but I feel like he'll definitely be someone I have in my pool. He'd be my favorite Chiefs receiver. I just don't want to deal with Mahomes and burning money trying to figure out who he's going to throw it to. So for that reason, I'm probably not going to be on Kelsey. I'm probably not going to be on Mahomes. But I like MVS. Juju isn't going to have the ceiling that I think I'm going to need, and people are going to be pretty bullish on him. So he's just an easy pass. I think McColl's going to fight with Sky for the third wide receiver situation. So not really going there. My favorite play in this game is Connor. I just think Connor will see a role where he's going to have to step up in the passing game just because of what they lack at receiver. And he's interesting because he's right near Mixon. He's in a pretty chalky range, and he's just going to be totally overlooked, and he could see a 3-down roll. So Out on the quarterbacks, definitely love pieces from the highest total game on the slate.
It's an interesting take because I mean, Kelsey to me feels like, remember lost the constant. He's going to be the constant, and then like the whack-a-mole game of, and even, Mahomes came out and said like 1 week it's going to be different. It's going to be different guys, and we're going to see MBS get that A dot and get his 70-yard touchdown pass at some point. Will be this week. I don't know, no idea. Nico's another guy. It just feels like the variance is huge. Juju, 1 year deal, show me deal. He's going to be trying his best, obviously, to get paid at some point. More the young rookie. I feel good about Kelsey. Everybody else does too. Salary cap reasons, and he's going to be heavily owned. And interesting as far as Murray, because one of the most popular receivers in the slate is going to be Marquise Brown, and Marquise Brown historically a big variance guy as well too. A little bit more reliable late last year, but typically he was sort of a boom bust guy, at least historically for him. So maybe that lifts up Murray's ownership to some degree there, Kirkwood, just because people don't want to pair Brown with him.
Well, so if this narrative is going out there about Kyler, I can like tilt it the other way. The Chiefs gave up the most rushing fantasy points to running backs last season. They do still have Marquise Hollywood Brown, like you said. KC struggled against the deep ball. Kyler will throw that deep ball. Hollywood, it will go. I don't know if we'll catch it, but he will be open on the deep
ball.
Touch it. Yeah. But it's there. Like there's a lot of good things there with this. So if I feel when I'm finally crunching at the end of the day and before lock here, if I feel like Kyler is just going to be completely overlooked, I'm just going to jack him up because I'm going to embrace variance.
All right, we got to get a move on. We got to talk some running backs, some receivers, some tight ends. Again, the show is on for 2+ hours. We yield about 25 minutes or so. So let's get going. Bobby, give me the lay of the land as far as running backs, FanDuel wise, just because of the price on Saquon. You're getting a bit of a discount there. He's the most highly sought after as far as ownership as of right now, 23%. CMC is at 19%. He's 9.5 there. Of course, he can catch the ball a ton, and he's 1K less on DK, so he's going to be super popular on DraftKings. Cash game staple in my estimation on DK. He's the most heavily owned. It's also CMC and Barkley there as well. Obviously, the spend-ups and the ways to get away are awesome, like Jonathan Taylor. Well, he's not going to be buried in the slate, obviously, but I think Henry, we're probably going to get around 10% or so, and traditionally not a great DK play because he doesn't really catch the ball, but if he runs for 200 and gets 2 touchdowns, who cares how many times he catches the ball? Give me your overall, thoughts as far as running backs, Bobby. What do you got for me?
Yeah, so CMC's ceiling is higher than Jonathan Taylor's. He has the highest ceiling on the slate. The ownership's going to be very, very high on CMC. I love CMC. I had him locked in at the beginning of the week, and I've kind of lowered my ownership just because of the opportunity cost of the position. I think my favorite running back is Eckler. Then I'll probably say DeAndre Swift in that Hurts game. He could pick up ownership. I'm seeing him hit some of the industry optimals Swift as of right now. So I don't mind him. I think he's a good chalk. If they're trailing, he's going to get a lot of the work. And Henry, people aren't going to play Henry. You're taking away these pass catchers. He's seen an uptick when in the passing game when you're AJ Brown's gone. So I don't know. He could see more passes than what we usually expect. So I don't mind Henry at all on the high end. And Connor, I said, I think he takes a 3-down role there. Mixon's going to be very popular. I think he can be a squeeze playoff Mixon. So don't mind Connor. I'll have some McCaffrey be under. Elijah Mitchell in that rain game, I think is a very solid play. A.J. Dillon, where everyone's going to go to Aaron Jones just because he should see the passing work. I think he's someone that I want to get exposure to. He's a guy in that 5K range that could get 2 touchdowns, and he'll be involved in the passing game as well. So I don't mind that. I think he has a better rushing yards prop to Aaron Jones, but it's just for a matter of obviously Jones is going to see the receptions, but I think Dillon can have a little bit more work in the passing game than what we're seeing. Dalvin Cook's not going to be owned. I'm going to be over on him. Chase Edmonds is someone I really like. Think Edmonds at the running back position, going down low, pairing him with the Dolphins D is a really sharp play on this slate. Patriots have always struggled to pass catching running backs. Edmonds seems like he's going to be the leader in that backfield. And on the other side of that game, Stevenson, I think you could just see Stevenson being the guy in New England. right out the gate. And I think people are going to overlook that. That's like some of the ambiguity I think you can lean into week one. ETN and Sanders have rounded out for me, but I don't have too much of them, just sprinkles in MMA.
Yeah, I like both Edmonds and Tyreek. I'm not really sure what Miami's going to do, but the new OC, the new head coach, he was super creative out there in San Francisco, and I think he's going to. And they paid Edmonds. They did everything they could to get Tyreek. They're going to use those weapons for sure. I know there's not a lot of love for Tua out there, but I like both those guys individually for tournaments. What do you got here, Kirkwood? Lay the lid as far as running backs.
First, I want to give a shout out to Naked HD. They had a big merger with NFL SQTV.
Okay.
So congratulations. They're making things happen here. But all right, running back. I like McCaffrey. I mean, you got to play some McCaffrey. You can go under for sure, but he's a cheat code when he's healthy. He's only 8,500. Massive usage for us. Browns were fifth in DVOA versus passing backs last season, so it's a pretty tough matchup, but I don't really care. He's averaged over 27 fantasy points a game in his last 39 healthy games. He's only played 10 healthy games the last 2 seasons. But anyway, he's got a massive receiving yard prop, 46.5. That's been going up too. So you have to like him. JSU, who's a GOAT, who we do the Tournament Takes podcast, like absolutely. I wasn't even thinking about like Aaron Jones, even though I knew he would be popular, but I just kind of like in my head, I say Aaron Jones and Dylan, and I kind of like say, I don't want guys taken away from each other. But it's like, what if I told you that there's like an elite running back who's under 7K, who's is the number 1 wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers on the Green Bay Packers?
It's not Cobb or Dobbs?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, and then you look back just to last season and you look at some of his target games. I mean, so he's had a game where he had 10 targets, 9 receptions for 129 yards. He had a game where he had 11 targets. He's definitely going to be Rodgers' guy that he trusts the most in this offense. I mean, maybe Cobb is the guy that Rodgers trusts the most. I don't know, but Aaron Jones is the one to me. So I love Aaron Jones today. And over on Yahoo tonight, I think, Leonard Fournette is going to be chalk on Yahoo because they include, they include the night game.
He's like $25 over there.
He's like 23, I think it is. Okay. And Aaron Jones is 22. And I'm just going to jam. I think my differentiation is just to jam Aaron Jones, and hope that this Bucks team is in shambles a little bit tonight. And I respect the Dallas D. So that's just something I'm thinking about doing. But other than that, we got to address Saquon. He's going to be chalk because he's 6,100 and he's healthy and he's Saquon. If 2 years ago we would have been like, this is the biggest lock of all locks ever, right? It's basically snaps with him. I mean, he was like when he in the games 2, 3, and 4 last season where he was healthy, he got hurt in the 5th game against I think it was Dallas. And I remember that because I was like all in on him that week. And he was right off the bat in the beginning. He, stepped on the ankle and turned his ankle and it was over with. But in that little stretch there, he played 84% of the snaps. Giants upgraded the O-line, as I had been saying. The Titans allowed the second. They were pretty good at stuffing the run last season, but they give up a lot in the passing game. So it just makes a lot of sense. He's also has a good rushing yard prop, has a good reception yards prop. So there's a lot to like about Saquon. It's not the greatest matchup, but 84% of the snaps just stands out to me.
Yeah, team total less than 20, 5-point dogs here on the road, but the opportunity is pretty strong. He should get a ton of usage. He can catch the ball plenty even if they're down. I want to get Bobby. Give me your take as far as Pierce. Pierce is the cheapie as far as running backs. There's an opportunity cost for sure. His running back is loaded. We just kind of glossed over Henry. We kind of glossed over Taylor. Of course they should be. If you're running 150, I think they should be in your mix. What do we have as far as Pierce? Or give me somebody at that price point that you think is an interesting pivot, if there is somebody.
I think Pierce is definitely someone to consider in tournaments. You have one of their D lines out, Shaq. He changed his name, Shaq Leonard or whatever. Yeah. So Pierce, I actually like Houston in this game, so it should fit Pierce. I think he's fine. I just don't think – I think his ownership, just how best ball's been for this entire summer, it might be a lot higher than what the sites are currently projecting, which is – it might not be a bad thing. But if the game script isn't what it is and it flips, then he might not see the passing game usage that you'd like him to see. Guys in that range, I think Mostert's someone. If you're playing these Miami running backs, you should be grouping them away from Tyreek Hill, just because if he catches a bomb, it's pretty much game over for one whole drive for those running backs, and they're already splitting. Yeah, that would be one of them that I'd be considering. And then Stevenson, Elijah Mitchell, Dillon, those are all guys like in that Pierce range that I think are going to be lower owned and have similar upside.
Kirkwood, you got an official Pierce take. Currently, he's in both my DraftKings and FanDuel cash lineup for salary cap reasons, if for nothing else. And, opportunity should be there. At least he's took over the number one job there in Houston. Not a lot of competition. There's Burkhead, who's kind of lurking. Maybe the third down guy. We'll kind of see how that goes down. But you got a Pierce take, or maybe somebody that's worth mentioning that we've kind of glossed over or haven't even acknowledged just yet.
Yeah. So with Pierce, I think playing him is fine. I'm not excited about it because of Rex, sexy Rex Burkhead in the passing game work. And I don't expect games. Maybe I'm wrong. In playing the game script game on week one can crush you because things just go crazy. Games just go crazy. But I fully expect the Colts to impose their will on the Texans and. I just don't think in that scenario he has a monster ceiling. The guy I wanna offer as a pivot here that no one's really talking about much is the guy within the game with the highest point total. A game where a lot of the narrative has already been that the Arizona is depleted weapons and KC may just mop the floor with them. Well, if KC handles them pretty easily, you got to expect Clyde Edwards-Helaire to potentially, and I get it. This guy has not performed very well, had a ton of hype coming in, has had, a couple of bad seasons here, where he just hasn't, he's battled injuries, and he hasn't been as productive. I fully expect him to get the goal line stuff. And I could see him popping off. That's a good way to play it. If we're not high on Mahomes and we're not high on Kyler in that game, why wouldn't we want Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
Yeah, well, he had that mystery illness last year that basically came out in the offseason. I think he lost a bunch of weight as well, too. But, and theoretically, you can catch passes, too. I know they have McKinnon there, and the shiny new toy in the offseason, or at least in the preseason, at least for a week, was Pacheco people were excited about. But I do think that CEH will be the clear number one back, at least start the season. We'll see how that goes. Going to talk receivers and tight ends in a second here for the next 10-ish minutes or so. We're going to yield to Beimfohr. We're going to yield to SDL Cards and the rest of the crew, taking you guys all the way up the luck. If you're hanging out in chat, kindly just hit the like button. Yeah, smash it, touch it, caress it, whatever your active of choice happens to be. Like, subscribe, turn on those notifications so you know when not just this show, but all the shows. You know when Kirkwood, tell the people. You mentioned it a couple of times. I listened to your podcast with Bobby and JSU. Tournament Takes. It comes on Friday. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it was so we did the Run Pure RotoGrinders collaboration. We got JSU back. JSU and I were the ones who started that pod with Killer B, who's no longer around. So man, I was just pumped to get him back on. The kid's a goat. Has some great takes. I respect it a lot. Bobby's a goat. Bobby's been crushing NFL for years. Yeah, that comes out on Fridays. It was a little late this week, and I think it didn't get released till Saturday morning. But that was because of the graphics with Run Pure and stuff we had to put in. So it'll be up on Friday, by Friday evening each week.
Boston Takeover. All three of you guys are. I know I was talking to Bobby pre-show. You guys are basically neighbors. Is JSU also kind of sort of a neighbor? Or I know Boston's a big city.
He's from Worcester. He's about 30 minutes away, 20 minutes, but he comes into Boston. He's been over, we've gone out and stuff like that. But yeah.
I see a lot of questions in chat and I want to get to them, but I don't know if we're going to have time to do so. For sure, the Crunch Time crew will be able to answer as many questions as possible in chat. That's kind of built into their show. So if you guys are sticking around all the way up the lock, eventually your questions will be answered. Of course, you'll have to ask them again. Do want to mention you can sign up for the FanDuel Sportsbook if you're in illegal sports betting states. you can take advantage of their awesome bonus offer. Bet $5, you win $150 regardless if your bet wins or loses. Terms and the conditions apply. And also Scores and Odds, scoresandodds.com for all your things sports betting. There are some free articles over there. It's also a premium product, product as well. Check out scoresandodds.com. It'll help you with your sports betting needs tremendously. It'll help you find the best lines when you're lineup shopping. That is very, very important. That's one of the biggest edges when it comes to sports betting. Kirkwood, I'm going to give you the honor of kicking off receiver. A little bit different depending on where you're shopping. Pittman is 23% owned. Clearly the most popular guy on DK. Just seems to be severely underpriced. I like him on FanDuel too, but like the price seems more appropriate. Therefore, he's not going to be nearly as owned. He's not a cash game guy in my estimation. At least it's not making my build like him. Just doesn't work for me. Your thoughts as far as receiver?
So I'll start it off with Marquise Brown, who I like. There's no D-Hop or more. Like I said earlier, Casey defended the struggle, the deep ball. He became a much more consistent threat from targets last season. We always have this picture that he was this deep ball only guy. It was a boom or bust, but that wasn't the case last season. They targeted him to come over to this offense to play with Kyler Murray, who will throw that deep ball. So I really like him. He was 11th in air yards last season. Should have a massive target share. It's the highest total game, so that stands out. Pittman, sure, I like him. Chalk Pittman, I don't know. I'd rather go to like a guy like Elijah Moore or something like that for tournaments, who I expect to have a really good game, who's been great with Flacco. Like Flacco, target him. He had like a 40% target share with Flacco, or something ridiculous like that. Also with Pittman, the thing I do like is Texans play zone. Pittman destroys zones, always has. The question I have is, will they pass enough? But Pittman was 15th in receptions last year, and that was with Carson Wentz. Also 25% target share, 31% air yards. And so, again, that's with Carson Wentz. Should be an upgrade with Matt Ryan. I don't think Matt Ryan is that great at this point in his career. I don't think he was ever that great, but he's a better, more accurate passer for sure. So that should bode well. But like I said, for tournaments, I'm probably going to go to guys like Elijah Moore, try to find pivots off of them. Jamar Chase is just ridiculous. There's not a lot to say. Like him and Justin Jefferson, like those guys are beasts, right? Then I wanted to talk about my Giants take with Sterling Shepard. So basically, and I got this from Scott Barrett. I like to quote my sources here. Unlike some people in baseball, but basically, the Dan Duggan, who's the beat reporter for the Giants over for The Athletic, basically said, with Shep officially back, it's time to break out my bold prediction. I've been squatting on Sterling Shepard will lead this team in receptions. Scott Barrett followed it up. Shepard has hit 17 fantasy points in 5 of his last healthy games with Daniel Jones active, averaging 23.1 fantasy points per game. And over his last 11 healthy games with Jones active, he's averaged over 9 targets. So, I'm like, people have totally counted Sterling Shepard out, but I think he comes in and is the number one Giants wide receiver right here. And I think the Giants are going to be a little bit better than what we think.
All right, Bobby, feel free to elaborate anything that Kirkwood just said. I would just say Mike Williams. Love the Chargers in general, but I think you're getting a significant discount off of Keenan Allen. So Mike Williams is kind of my cash game guy right now on FanDuel. Just sort of make stuff work over there. Traditionally not a great cash game play because he's got a big variance, but he also can put up 2 and 120, and that can save you if somebody else tanks. What do you have here, Bobby, as far as wide receivers?
Yeah, so for the wide receiver position, this is where I find myself living in this 5K range. I know a lot of people are going to go to Pittman, but the opportunity cost I just think is too great. Guys I like around him, Hunter Renfrow, I think he's in a really good spot in that San Diego Chargers game. You could run him back with Mike Williams. Christian Kirk, he could see the full allotment of targets in this Jaguars offense. Adam Thielen, I think a lot of people are going to go to Jefferson. I think Thielen on the offside, first week, good time to play Thielen. He can easily have 2 touchdowns. Don't mind him. Brandon Cooks in that same Marquise Brown range, I think, is very interesting. And Kirkwood hit on my favorite guy, Elijah Moore, with Flacco. I think he's a really good run back. I'm going to be playing a lot of Lamar, so like him. Don't usually like to run back a 19-point team total, but I think the target share will be there. Jamar Chase is another, like, paying up. I just think a lot of people are going to play Mixon. If Chase catches a bomb, it's taking away a drive from Mixon. I like Chase. I think that they're going to start off hot, this Bengals team. I know there's a little rain there. A lot of people are gravitating to Mixon. I'm kind of going to be going to Chase a little bit more. Jalen Waddle, where everyone, I feel like Belichick does a great job, or has in the past, of defending Tyreek. Waddle is someone that I think is going to be not as highly owned as he should be in the spot, and he's torched the Patriots in the past. So those are the guys that I'm kind of keying in on as of right now. Marquise Brown, I think I'll probably field him. I don't know if I'm playing A.J. Brown. I think he's just going to be too chalky. If I were to play A.J. Brown, I wouldn't play him with Jalen Hurts, but I don't know. Marquise Brown, I think I'll probably play. I just don't know as of yet. He seems like he's going to be the cash game wide receiver, right?
He is. Yeah, I feel like you're supposed to be underweight on him in tournaments. I just feel like you're just supposed to.
Okay, so maybe I'll just leave him out.
I mean, look, I wouldn't. I'm not going to cross him out, but I feel like you're supposed to be less in the field.
I'll probably be. Yeah. So I don't know. Right now, I don't have him currently, just because I have like Higgins, I have Brandon Cooks, who I like a ton. Just guys there that I think are like Waddles, right in that same range, who I really like. Yeah, it's tough to just cross them out, but
you got a favorite game still?
Amon-Ra St. Brown, we didn't even touch.
Amon-Ra St. Brown's at 6,100 too. Like, there's guys there.
Yeah.
Tyreek is just a little bit.
And they're in like established situations where Marquise, obviously he played with Kyler at Oklahoma, but I want to see it in the NFL level, right? So I don't know. That we expect the target share to be increased in this situation, and it has. My recency bias has always been that Marquise just catches bombs, but that kind of changed, like Kirkwood kind of hit on when he was breaking them down. So I can see an uptick in usage. Just got to figure out where to play him.
All right, don't mean to rush you guys. We're kind of in a lightning round here. Kirkwood, give me your favorite stack or two, maybe a game stack, maybe a team stack, however you want to answer that.
I mean, I think it's going to be the Raiders with Carr and some of these new weapons, and then playing it back on with the Chargers. I mean, it's we know what we're getting from the Chargers, so it's Keenan, it's Mike Williams, it's Eckler. Play a bunch of variations of that, and then potentially Gerald Everett as like a cheap tight end play with Parham. I don't think Parham's going to be good to go today, so Everett's a guy that could be kind of a difference maker.
Bobby,
but I wanted to give out one last play on wide receiver. Sorry. George Pickens is like the one rookie that I can get behind. There's been a lot of good talk behind him. It looks like he's the number 2. And he should be matching up with Eli Apple, which would be a really good matchup for him. So I just wanted to throw that one. That's like the one rookie I like today.
Bobby, favorite couple stacks, and like feel free to touch on tight end. Again, they're going to talk tight end when we jump off out of here. And poor time management on my part, with just a 50 minutes, just sort of flies by as far as the conversation. Like, of course, Kelsey's spectacular. Andrews is an awesome tournament pivot. Pitts is going to be pretty popular on FanDuel because the price just kind of puts you there. I did think it was interesting. It took us 58 minutes, whatever it was, to mention Austin Eckler, who was just a fabulous play, who's just going to be kind of somewhat sort of lost on this slate to some degree, just because there's so many good options. What do you have, Bobby, as far as, again, feel free to touch on tight ends and your favorite couple stacks on this slate?
Yeah, like the Pickens call by Kirkwood, and that's interesting with Eli Apple. I have a good bit of Pickens right now. For me, like, I think it's Lamar. Like, I like Lamar and Andrews. Everyone's going to be going to Kelsey, Mahomes. I like undercutting that. You're basically paying 100 more for Andrews, but I think he's very much in play. That would be my favorite stack. And then I'll have pieces from a lot of these 4 o'clock games. Kirkwood hit on Gerald Everett again. I think I'm going to have Gerald Everett's probably going to be my highest owned tight end. I really think he's in a good spot. Like the Chargers and Oakland just seems like a really good game to target. Outside of that, in terms of tight ends, Tonyan I think is very interesting. People aren't going to play Tonyan. They're going to go to all these other guys. And Tonyan's had success with Rodgers previously. I know he was out injured for the majority of last year, but I think he's relatively sneaky. Hunter Henry's the guy I think that's relatively sneaky. So Darren Waller at 5'4", like Derwin James is there. I don't think their secondary is as good. that's too cheap. A lot of these tight ends, like you definitely play double tight end this week just because all these tight ends are going to be like 500 more come 3 weeks from now, right? So
I like that ever call. Are we certain that Parham's officially out, or is assuming he's
No,
out?
I think that's just me. I'm kind of expecting him to be out. I
I'm
don't think it's
expecting
officially out.
also too.
I dropped the weather report. Somebody was asking about weather. Roth did upgrade, I guess you could say. It's now just yellow in Chicago for what it's worth. It was orange earlier. We got to step aside and make way for STL cards, for Brit Devine, for Tim. You got Mr. Tuttle.
One last take.
No, yeah, I was going to throw to you. Give me your last take and give me 30 seconds or so as far as tight ends. I didn't mean to neglect you as far as tight ends.
Nutty, I just want to get that Likely call because someone just mentioned in chat too. I like Likely. I'm on the same boat, right? So he's behind Mark Andrews, but they should be playing 2 tight end sets. They really like his blocking, and like he was crushing in preseason playmaking. He should be on the field for like all game, and I think they're going to pass more with Dobbins out for sure in this game, and I think there's a really good chance for touchdown equity for a $2,500 tight end. So that's the guy that I want to make sure I have some for $2,500. That kind of just unlocks a lot if it works. If it doesn't work, I know he has zero floor. We know that. Okay.
Yeah, he looks the part, and like if he gets 0 and like he's got the number 80, and every likely that people are gonna have some fun with the memes in the back of his jersey. But Bobby, give me a hot take before we get out of here and yield to the boys coming behind us. Give me a hot take. Give me the winner who's taking down the Millie today. By the way, on FanDuel, it's only 71% full. They're Millionaire Maker. $4 to jump in there. You can win yourself $1 million. It may overlay. We'll see. Just keep an eye on that. But give me a hot take. Let's finish strong, Bobby.
Yeah, Kirkwood bringing up Isaiah Likely, Everett Mass guy, so keeping the Boston theme going on the show. I'm going to go with Austin Eckler. I think he's going to be on the winner for this slate. I think he's the guy.
I love that call. We're going to step aside. We're going to get out of here. Do appreciate y'all watching us. Kindly hit that like button. Do subscribe. Do turn on notifications. Don't go anywhere, though. Again, this stream is taking y'all straight up to lock. We'll be replaced momentarily. Bobby, fun first show. Welcome aboard to RG once again. Kirkwood, always a pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine, my friend.
That was Kirkwood. That was Bobby. I was Dean. Enjoy it, man. Hey, turn on that red zone. Watch for 7 hours and just camp out. We're going to be relieved in just a second. I never – when you see a throwing it to a person, I'm not throwing it to anybody, but we're going to step aside and we'll be replaced now.
We're here back in the fantasy bar. It's football season, and we are back with 6 of my favorite plays on FanDuel and DraftKings, including a cheap running back I think is in a great spot. A quarterback I think can finish as the highest scoring one without all the ownership. Some of my favorite correlation plays, and of course, my favorite play of the week. Who we talking about? Belly up to the fantasy barn. Find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 1 edition. NFL is back, and we are here. 6 guys fresh off the tap for you on FanDuel and DraftKings for Week 1. Thank you so much for stopping by the Fantasy Bar and checking out the video. If you have been here over all the years of the Fantasy Bar, you know the drill. 6 picks each and every week. If you are new to the video and the Fantasy Bar, welcome in. We are glad to have you here. Now, before we get into the plays, couple things. First off, if you're watching on YouTube, take a second, click that. The other sports as well, the ability to compare odds across all the different sports books, see who's betting on who, and premium picks from some of your favorite RotoGrinders personalities on these games, myself included, will be providing you with NFL picks this season. Tons there. Go and check it out today. Scoresandodds.com/beer. Again, that link in the description of the video. All right, let's get into it. Week 1 always a fun week. Lots of big tournaments out there, potential overlay brewing as well. And we'll stick to the main slate here with my favorite plays. Let's start at the wide receiver position, A.J. Brown of the Eagles. Now, still weird to say the Eagles here. A.J. Brown, longtime Tennessee Titan, but he comes over in that draft day trade here to the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think this is going to be a smash season for Brown and the Eagles. Last time these two teams met up, game was in Detroit last season. Eagles absolutely dominated this Detroit Lions team 44-6. I know there's a lot of excitement around the Lions right now, coming off of Hard Knocks, and a team a lot of people are betting on to outproduce their win total here. But I think Philly, just the much better team here in this one. I think what we're going to see here, as far as ownership goes, we don't know what this offense is going to look like. We know Philadelphia can be very run heavy with that great offensive line. Questions on Jalen Hurts. Can he get it done through the air? I think that's going to help us in the ownership department. I think people are going to have questions on this one, and they're going to look elsewhere to some of these higher total games that we have on the slate. But this matchup, absolutely ideal. Philly going to want to get their new toy involved right away. Detroit, 5th most receptions allowed, 2 wide receivers last season, 2nd most receiving yards allowed. And I don't see any changes in that defense that are going to get them better here. Maybe offensively, they're going to be able to compete, keep this game close. I think A.J. Brown going to absolutely dominate this secondary of the Detroit Lions. All right, let's get to the running back position. Tons of options here. We're going to go on this cheaper side of things with Chase Edmonds of the Dolphins. So another guy that changes teams here. They paid him a lot of money. I know Raheem Mostert going to work in, very familiar with McDaniel and that San Francisco system here. But Edmonds is the guy, and you're going to see low ownership for a few reasons. We have tons of running backs, tons of studs on this slate. No bye week set, so lots of choices for people to be made. There's a lot of cheaper wide receiver options on the slate here, especially on DraftKings. That's going to lead to a lot of Christian McCaffreys, Dalvin Cooks, guys like that in the lineup. Can Chase Edmonds compete with those guys? Maybe the ceiling isn't as high, but I think he can get close enough and really drastically outproduce his salary, which is what we're looking for with our plays. He also has that questionable tag. That's going to scare some people away. So should see minuscule ownership here on Chase Edmonds. These prices seem a little bit too low. I mean, this is a guy I would not be surprised we're paying $7K for, and that's one of the things I love to look at early in the season. Who are guys we're buying low on? What are their prices going to look like towards the middle of the season? I feel this is the lowest we're going to get on Chase Edmonds, so don't wait. Let's buy in now here against New England, a defense that, yes, can be good, but they struggle against running backs, specifically pass-catching running backs. Last season, bottom 10 in rushing yards allowed, receptions, and receiving yards to the running back position. So no, Miami brought in Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Chase Edmonds, still going to be a big part of that passing game as well. Good matchup here, home favorite, checks that box for us, and simply too cheap and too low owned Chase Edmonds, one of my favorite running backs here on the week. All right, let's get to the quarterback position. I promise you a guy with big time upside and little ownership. We're going Lamar Jackson of Baltimore. Now, this contract situation with Lamar Jackson, it's all we've heard about all offseason. All of these other guys getting paid while he sits there like the John Travolta gift, saying, what the hell, where's my money? I think that's really going to fuel him into an MVP-like season, which we've already seen out of Lamar Jackson. So I think big-time numbers are incoming here. We also have the running back situation here. We don't know what's going to happen here with J.K. Dobbins. I'd expect him to either sit or be limited. Rashad Bateman here, the Jets, 5th most fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. Oh, they made some upgrades on that defense through the draft.
We'll get her going here in a second. All right. We are live. GPP Final Takes here on RotoGrinders.com week 1. It's finally here. Tuttle, of course, I am your host, Erik Beimfohr. You can find me on Twitter at ErikBeimfohr. Joined this week. I think we're still figuring out kind of the tentative schedule for the second person on this show, but joined by Dan Gaspar, aka Mr. Tuttle 05, the wizard behind all the projections, the ownership, and everything. So I'll definitely be leaning on Tuttle a lot today. But Tuttle, how are we feeling? An hour and a half out, and it's here. I know you put in a lot of work. Are you ready for the slate?
Yeah, definitely ready for the slate. It's hard. Week 1's hard. It's a lot of work, like you mentioned. Somewhat thankfully, not too many game time decision type of injuries this week.
Yeah.
Really leading up today was like J.K. Dobbins. What's he going to do? We kind of had a lot of information really known for the last few days at least. So yeah, at least no last second scrambling.
Feels weird. Week 1, even not last second scrambling like you mentioned, but just general, like you said, not really anything we've been waiting for or any major injuries or anything like that heading in. Really quick housekeeping before we start to kind of dive into some of those nuances. If you did not watch last year, this show, it's a smidge different than maybe some of the other DFS shows. Obviously, we are mostly tournament focused. That we'll have to talk through some of the chalk, maybe the cash type plays, because that's important for tournaments as well. But we'll largely kind of not be going game by game or position by position. We might be digging into some of the themes of the slate, right? That could be very different week to week. Maybe that is game by game, and some of that maybe this week will be a little bit of that. Sometimes position by position. We'll kind of walk through some of the most important themes from a tournament perspective for every single slate. And so I kind of wanted to pick your brain on that, Tuttle. I feel like this slate is really wide open from a tournament perspective. We obviously have some guys who are, going to be more owned, going to be chalky, whatever. But because of the fact that normally in week 1, we have like Cam Akers gets hurt last year, right? Cam Akers gets hurt, or Travis Etienne gets hurt, or something like that happens. It creates some chalk. And that's not really the case. That, we have a couple guys out, Alan Lazard, right? DeAndre Hopkins and Rondale Moore, but that's not the level that we would usually see. So what's your kind of like just quick first take of like, what do we need to be most aware of for tournaments?
Yeah, you kind of mentioned that nobody due to injury is cropping up as chalk, which is maybe a little weird. Like Marquise Brown's going to be a little bit higher owned now, but he's still not screaming as like people are going to just jam him in type of play that we typically see.
Yeah.
And then there's the question on the Green Bay stuff. Are we not reacting enough? Aaron Jones, is he just going to get, 15 checkdowns? They're struggling with guys on the line. He's going to be a huge part of the passing game anyways. It's going to be a lot of quick hitters, I think, there. So I almost feel like maybe we're not reacting enough. But again, that's a good thing for tournaments. I do think we'll probably see pretty flat ownership. On FanDuel specifically, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, 2 of the highest owned guys that we have projected. Jonathan Taylor kind of just always gets there. Public loves playing Jonathan Taylor, and rightfully so. He's absolutely gashed Houston the last couple times they faced each other. So I get that. But other than that, yeah, it's I think fairly spread out.
And I think the JT and Pittman thing is one of the things that stuck out to me. And it's funny because obviously we have 2 guys who are kind of alpha type guys in their offense with limited competition. Obviously Jonathan Taylor is crazy high upside, like you mentioned, certainly against the Texans in any matchup, but certainly against the Texans. But it's always one of those things for me when one of the highest owned running backs and one of the highest owned wide receivers are on the same offense, because generally speaking, it's not impossible, but particularly with the archetype of Jonathan Taylor, right? He's more of I'm going to run for 150 and 2 touchdowns to break the slate, where Michael Pittman needs a little bit more of, the other team to keep up, maybe the game to shoot out a little bit more to like really break the slate. And it's funny, I was looking at this morning that you mentioned that, because, I see the projection on Pittman just like everybody else does. It looks really strong. He wasn't very good against the Texans last year. 2 games, small sample, not worried about it, generally speaking, but a lot of it has to do with what you mentioned. When JT gashes them, Pittman, it's just hard for him to, break a slate. And in particular in week 1, where there's like 25, 30 wide receivers I want to play, I don't know that I want to side with the most popular one in Pittman. And so he was kind of him and JT are kind of where I wanted to start.
Honestly, that's kind of what makes FanDuel great this week, is you don't have to feel forced to play Michael Pittman like you do elsewhere. Because they actually did a pretty good job at pricing him. To answer the initial question, I would not play those guys together. If you did, you probably have to do you have to do a run back because you're
Yeah.
you're shooting for a way outlier outcome there. So you're hoping Brandon Cooks brings it back with 150 yards and a touchdown or two. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. So the weird thing about that game too is we do have two high owned options with Pittman and Jonathan Taylor. The line has been kind of interestingly moving against the Colts this week.
Yeah.
I've seen some sharp takes that they actually think Houston's going to win straight up, which I don't think are actually all that crazy, which seems weird. But in that instance, we're looking at like a Dameon Pierce, who I actually like quite a bit. And I think he's especially in play on FanDuel where he's only 5,400.
Yeah.
But you get a game where they're actually kind of controlling the pace a little bit. We haven't seen Lovie Smith. I mean, last year was a little bit different because he didn't have any good running backs, but still he wasn't never this confident as like naming, hey, this guy is our starting running back. This is our guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people are kind of overlooking that a little bit. Like, we saw last week in week 1, Lovie Smith actually gave his running back, Mark Ingram, 26 carries because they ended up winning a game that was kind of unexpected. And I wouldn't be that surprised if it was, I'm not banking on 26 carries here for Dameon Pierce, but, 15, 20 touches, I don't think is unrealistic. And if he scores a touchdown on those at 5,400, he's just an absolute smash.
Yeah, also definitely another example of a guy I do prefer on FanDuel, but a theme, kind of a next theme that I was going to get into, which is a little bit positional. But Rob, if you can just go to all the running backs. Running back, when you look at the highest owned players, outside of probably, I guess, Saquon, who's technically an elite option, I guess, but not necessarily priced like an elite option. So that's why he's being really, projected to be very highly owned. But everyone's paying up at running back. We talked about Pittman. There's other tons of wide receivers in the mid-tier or cheap that you can play. Pick your poison. We'll probably get there to a long, long list of wide receivers that, anybody that knows me, I come from the best ball space and do tons of stuff in the off season. And there's all these guys that we're taking in like the 4th round of fantasy football drafts that are like 5K on DraftKings, Michael Pittman being kind of the leader of that circle. So that means other positions you have money. And from an optimal lineup build, right? Who fits that better than Christian McCaffrey or Jonathan Taylor? Saquon being, a great point per dollar option. Najee Harris, an every down workhorse back, right? Those kinds of guys end up getting elevated ownership. I don't mean elevated like it's over-owned, but getting elevated ownership just by the sheer fact that everyone's playing Pittman and these value wide receivers. And so for me, when you mentioned Dameon Pierce, that I love that range for tournaments on both sites. Paying down a little bit. I tagged 2 running backs here in lineup HQ that are in that range, Miles Sanders and Chase Edmonds, who I really like as lead backs on offenses, either huge favorites or favorites in general, catch passes, a little more so Chase Edmonds, but just kind of going the opposite direction. We'll get to, you've played this game probably even longer than me. We'll get to like week 8 and we'll be starving for the 5K back that projects as well as Dameon Pierce and Miles Sanders and Chase Edmonds, but no one's going to play them today. And so then I can just go get superstars at other positions. So that's one of the big themes for me is these kind of value running backs. What do you think about that general roster construction?
Yeah, I agree. Just flip the build on its head a little bit because it does feel like, okay, this is, I don't want to make this take. And it's like, I never want to be short or underweight on Christian McCaffrey, but it really does feel like people are just playing Christian McCaffrey because they can, not because he's like some screaming awesome play. I feel like they're overlooking. I know it's kind of gotten blown out of proportion, his injury proneness, blah, blah, blah. But what if they are a little bit more cautious with him to start the season? I know we haven't seen it in the past, but we're in the markets of trying to predict what's going to happen. Typically we do use, historical backing for that. But I feel like they are going to want to play, keep McCaffrey a little bit healthier. Maybe we're not going to see the 30 to 40 touch McCaffrey that we have in the past. Mm-hmm. Maybe we're looking at like 20 touch McCaffrey, which if they're smart, valuable touches, then he's still going to smash. But if he's getting, a lot of work in between the 20s, that's might not bode well for his game. So yeah, I mean, it feels like this is a week where we're jamming McCaffrey just to jam McCaffrey. And again, I hate making that take because he's the one guy that can just make me regret it instantly.
Oh,
But yeah, I like the idea of kind of going with a little different lineup construction because I don't feel like McCaffrey's as strong as a play as he's being made out to be, I guess.
And I think it's not even just like, oh, this is your take or my take, because I actually agree with you. So don't worry, you can plant that flag. I'll back you up. But it's not even just like, oh, I think Christian McCaffrey isn't a good play or isn't as good as maybe the market is saying. It is the market has made a stand that says Christian McCaffrey is same old Christian McCaffrey, and I have the money to play him, so I'm going to play him. And 2 years ago, we were playing him at like 11K or whatever, and it was right. So now you see 8,500, and you're like, oh, of course I'm clicking Christian McCaffrey. But that's the theme for me of this week, even more so than the running back thing, flipping the build, all that kind of stuff, is we have no idea about, like, and especially this year, right? Have we ever had Devontae Adams get traded and Russell Wilson get traded and, you know, all this chaos in an offseason? Christian McCaffrey himself has a new quarterback. What does that mean? Obviously, we expect Baker Mayfield to be an upgrade. Hopefully, it can't get worse than last year. But does that mean he's catching as many balls? Right? Those Cam Newton couldn't throw the ball further than 10 yards down the field, so CMC still is going to get, you know, a bunch of catches. What does the new year and these new situations, what does it mean for everybody? And so when the market says, I don't care about the potential uncertainty for Christian McCaffrey, that's when I would like to kind of lean into the other way and just be like, look, even if he scores 25, I'm not dead in tournaments, like not by any stretch. And I can get maybe some wide receivers that, you just do something simple. Fade Christian McCaffrey, fade Michael Pittman or something for an expensive, I don't particularly love Devontae Adams, but if you did something like that, right? Play Devontae at the wide receiver spot, play Chase Edmonds at running back instead of McCaffrey and Pittman. That's probably like almost the same salary too. That, like, do that. And it's a really simple 2v2 that doesn't project that different and is really banking on some uncertainty breaking out your way. And this is the week that I want to do that.
Yeah, totally agree. And if you're in the CMC, it's not the lineup construction angle, but you mentioned quarterback change. DJ Moore, he's cheap, and I like him a lot. I like him quite a bit. His leverage off McCaffrey, I think they'll put up some points. But again, like you said too, dealing with somebody like McCaffrey, he scores even 30 points, you're not dead. Once he gets to 40, then we're probably we're not in good shape. But 30 points, you still have outs for optimal lineups, even if he does that. So yeah, I think underweight stance there, and if you want to take it to the next level with some sort of leverage, I do think DJ Moore is a pretty strong play. It's
not yet Robbie Anderson time, but I'm sure there'll be a point on this show where Robbie goes 1 for 7 on 8 targets with 100 air yards later this year, and we'll be talking about him as value. But I like the DJ Moore thing, which also leads me into some leverage stuff. I mentioned the Miles Sanders thing. That was a guy for me. DJ Moore, he's the running back version for me of like DJ Moore. The Eagles are in an absolute smash spot. I mean, I don't think anyone is expecting them to not score a bunch of points, but Jalen Hurts projects as, the best point per dollar quarterback. We have AJ Brown is like barely over 6K. Devonta Smith is cheap. Dallas Goedert's cheap. They're all cheap. But because there's uncertainty in the backfield with Sanders, Gainwell, and even Boston Scott, you have, as you see on the screen here, 3% owned, 5K Miles Sanders in a game where he's the starting running back. How many touches does that mean as the starter? I have no idea. But he's the starting running back for a team we probably project to, be the highest scoring team, one of the highest scoring offenses, and have a positive game script. But no one's playing him because of roster construction, uncertainty, whatever. So DJ Moore is like kind of that example. DJ Moore is one of the highest target share superstar wide receivers in the NFL, but just because of how things have played out, he's a slight tier above pricing wise than some of the chalky guys. And we're playing CMC, like nobody's playing 2 Panthers. So, you just get such natural leverage. And that's, again, another theme of this week, that forcing leverage sometimes can be difficult. Like we'll be talking about leverage later on in the year, and it'll be like, using the Colts guys as an example, like Paris Campbell or Alec Pierce. And you're like, that's like technically leverage, but is that tournament winning leverage? Probably not. These are like superstars. These are like really high upside leverage plays. So again, these are just week 1 nuances that I think are like super important.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, some people forget with the Philadelphia situation, Hurts was chalk last year. against the Lions. I don't know if anybody remembers how that ended. But
oh my gosh, I forgot that game.
It was so tilt. Boston Scott, Jordan Howard, 2 touchdowns each. Miles Sanders didn't play that game. And like, they're going to score. They won 44-6 that game. But hey, that's in the range of outcomes again. Is that the running backs do it? Would not be that crazy at all.
Yeah, oh man, that does bring up some terrible. I think I ate that Hurts chalk that week too, and that was
chalk too. Yeah,
that was really brutal. So another team / game, probably game overall, the most popular game, and rightfully so, that I think is kind of one of the next top themes is Chiefs Cardinals.
Yep.
This is a really fascinating one, so we may have to spend a little even more time on this one, breaking it down. You've obviously got a better handle on, say, the projections, but the Cardinals obviously are without DeAndre Hopkins. Zach Ertz is supposed to play, but has been kind of really banged up in practice. Rondale Moore is out for the Arizona Cardinals, and the Chiefs are obviously in their first game without Tyreek Hill and with basically all new weapons and wide receivers. However, the Cardinals defense looks like it's going to be putrid. We know Chiefs games can be really beneficial for fantasy, but the market is on, right? Hollywood Brown is now one of the highest owned wide receivers. Travis Kelce's the highest owned tight end. Juju is up there in ownership, and Mahomes and Kyler both are. I don't worry too much about the quarterback a ton, but you're not sneaking by Patrick Mahomes this week, which I kind of thought might be the case early in the week. Definitely not. What are you thinking about? How are you attack? Is there a way to attack this game? Do we need to still play some of this chalk and, do the running back thing like we were talking about, play Miles Sanders and Dameon Pierce or something and then jam this game? Or what's your overall thoughts on this, the most popular game?
So this is definitely an interesting game. We talk about not necessarily wanting to eat chalk. We know this is going to be the most popular game, but there are so many different ways to attack it that I wouldn't be worried about this game getting out of control in terms of total ownership to your roster. My overall take on this game might be more of a betting angle than a DFS angle, but I think the Chiefs smash.
Yes.
And so a situation like that, again, you're probably wanting to go underweight on it in general. You could even go like almost an uglier version of Miles Sanders would be the Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Oh God. Yep.
Again, like this Cardinals offense could just be bad in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ertz is going to be really limited. Soft tissue, hammy injury, kind of seems like he's playing just to play, not necessarily because he's ready. So then what are they doing on offense? They got Marquise Brown. We don't know how he's going to fit with Kyler. We just don't. Like, people are assuming, and you kind of have to assume he's going to have a massive target share in the spot, but is he going to be efficient with it? We have no idea. What are they going to do with their backup receivers then? AJ Green, he's dust in my opinion. I don't expect him to be efficient, but he could see some targets, obviously. I think Greg Dortch is the guy that I would expect to fill in the slot. He spent most of the time there in the preseason. I was kind of hoping that the market would push Andy Isabella, and I don't think that's happening. I think you could make an argument that if you take a strong stand on Dortch and think he is the slot receiver now, I think you could kind of take the stance that he is arguably one of the better 3K options. And he's not being close to projected that way, but people would be playing like Romeo Doubs, who I don't think is a good option in tournaments. And people are actually playing in the cash games too. I don't think he's a good option in general. So it's like, play Greg Dortch over Romeo Doubs. I'm all for that. And you're going to get significant ownership discount in that situation. Not that I'm confident in Dortch, but again, I think he would be the slot guy. But then you run into the problem in these instances. Are they just going to, play less 11? Are they going to have more tight ends on the field?
Right.
And in that situation, that's the stuff that's really hard to project from a projection standpoint, or predict from a projection standpoint, is you don't know how these teams are going to adapt. With the Rams, they're going to play 11 all the time. They're going to have receivers out there all the time, but they're one of the very few offenses that actually does that. So the Cardinals, we could definitely just see more like Trey McBride on the field, which would then nullify any of that third receiver talk. So it is a very, very risky situation. But if you told me they were going to have 3 receivers on the field the majority of the time, then Dortch would be the guy that I would want to play.
I totally agree. That was my assessment So I'm glad to hear you say that. It's as painful as it is, for as much Andy Isabella as one of us on this show drafted multiple years ago in fantasy football, only to watch him literally waste away on the bench for a whole season. I tend to do that. Apparently, we did it with Trey Lance last year. I did it with Andy Isabella. I don't know who I drafted this year that's literally never going to play all season, but we'll probably find that out pretty shortly. But I think the market just gravitates to the name, like you said, and he's not getting steamed or anything like that. I'm not worried about it. But I think maybe not as a ton for the main slate, just because I do think your point about, like you mentioned, Dobbs, maybe I'm wrong and crazy, but I just don't feel like you need to do that on this slate. You don't need to dig that deep, and he's not that good of a play. It's not like, I don't know. I can't think of even a good example. This isn't some guy we're projecting for like 16 fantasy points. That's 3K. We don't even know how much he's going to play, even without Lazard. Like, truly, we don't know. The Packers are missing like their two best offensive linemen. Aaron Rodgers is not particularly the most, risk heavy quarterback. He's probably just going to be checking it down, like you said, to Aaron Jones and maybe Dylan Tunyon, Randall Cobb. It's just a gross situation for Dobbs that I don't want to, even at this 10%, right? People might say it's only 10% in the milli. Like, that's like 3 times over owned to me. Like, I think he's more of like a 3 to 5% type ownership play where you take some flyers. Dortch is the opposite end, where, again, maybe not on the main slate, maybe a little bit like in the milli, like there's your bring back. You want some gross leverage that we're already talking about in week 1. Play Dortch as your bring back to your Mahomes stacks instead of Hollywood. It's not fun, but if you're right about the Chiefs smashing, they do have to run some 10 and 11 personnel eventually, because if you're down by 2-3 touchdowns, you can't just sit with Zach Ertz and Trey McBride on the field. You're never going to beat the Chiefs that way. Although Cliff Kingsbury, I'm not sure that we should trust Cliff Kingsbury to ever do the right thing. And they do have, to your point, why I'm not super excited about it, they also have Max Williams. So tight end is the spot where I think that they could just use those guys. They definitely don't trust Andy Isabella. I kind of like Greg Dortch, going back to his Wake days in college football DFS.
He was awesome,
he was so awesome. So maybe I'm just a little bit biased, but I think, like, maybe on an afternoon slate, right? We all play some of the guys that we'll talk about here in a minute on the early slate, and we get to the afternoon slate and you're like, okay, let's just fire some Greg Dortch on the afternoon slate, just to feel something, because I lost a bunch of money already. And we didn't talk about Juju, the Chiefs side, really, other than CEH. Juju, MVS, Hardman, Kelsey. Juju is the highest owned wide receiver out of the group, and Kelsey is obviously who people are gravitating it to at tight end. But what are you thinking about with the Chiefs side of the game?
Yeah, see, I think that's why this game's interesting, is people are just assuming Juju's going to be the guy. But I also kind of think it's more of like they just view him as the safe option.
Yes.
Less volatile option, which we don't necessarily want that in tournaments, especially if he's going to be higher owned, which he is. Like, he's going to be, Kelsey might beat him out overall in terms of ownership, but in terms of the wide receivers, he will by far in a way be the highest owned Kansas City receiver. And I don't really completely understand this. I'm not going to say I have some amazing read on the Kansas City situation, but in the past, it has played out that if a receiver not named Tyreek Hill was injured, Hardman was just kind of dust. He didn't play. He didn't see as big of an increase in snap rate, which people kind of expected and almost seemed to burn people, which is now why they're off of him. But when Tyreek Hill was the receiver that was out, he did see a role increase. It was kind of like he was that 1v1 backup for Tyreek Hill. So I and it doesn't seem like that's what's being projected now. It doesn't seem like that was what people are expecting. But I do think Hardman's going to see a bigger role increase than, a situation where Tyreek Hill was still there. So I like Hardman. Hardman's the guy that I like quite a bit in tournaments. And I think, I don't even know, I have to look what we have him projected at, but I mean, he's going to be under 5% owned pretty easily.
On FanDuel, 1%.
Yeah. and again, some of the pricing is to blame there. But I do think on FanDuel specifically, we talked about Kelsey. It's not like he's going to be low owned, but Kyle Pitts is going to be the chalk on FanDuel because he's only 6K. So forcing in Kelsey, which is what I like quite a bit for, the single entry type builds.
Yeah.
I like forcing in Kelsey because, again, we have him projected as the second highest tight end, but still he's probably lower owned. You can still be projected for decent ownership and still be lower owned than you probably should be.
Yes, 100%.
I think that's where we're at with Kelsey this week.
Raw ownership versus efficient ownership. I think that's a big thing that people struggle with a lot, actually. Kelsey's on FanDuel specifically is such a good example. Maybe Kelsey Pitts on, we'll come back to the Chiefs, but the tight end thing is interesting. Kelsey Pitts, if we switch sites, you go to FanDuel and like neither of them are low. You're not getting sneaky Kelsey or sneaky Kyle Pitts. I mean, it's Travis Kelsey and Kyle Pitts, for Christ's sake. But you're getting on, depending upon the site, right? We're looking at the tight end here. Kelsey's 8K on FanDuel and Pitts is 6K. That's a massive difference in pricing, which leads Pitts to be maybe over-owned and Kelsey to be under-owned, even though, as you said, he's not low-owned. There's a difference. On DraftKings, I think it's kind of the opposite. You're like, the pricing is so soft, it's like $900 to get from Pitts in a so-so matchup to Kelsey in, with the highest projected scoring team of the day. Like, it's just easy to do. But that leads to Kelsey being probably over-owned and then maybe Pitts being under-owned. So I kind of like just flip-flopping those two. It's a really simple thing. Like, we like both those guys. Just play Pitts on DraftKings and Kelsey on FanDuel. On the Chiefs, I was just going to add. So for me personally, everybody can do their own things. This is our Final Takes show. I'm the host and you're the co-host. My Final Takes are, I don't think you should play Juju at all in tournaments. If you lose because Juju goes nuts, so be it. We move on to week 2. We get a lot of slates to play. This is the time where we have no freaking idea what this Chiefs target share is going to look like. And we have 2, maybe even 3, if you believe Sky's going to play a little bit. We have definitely 2 like big upside players for cheap. It's not like you have to pay a bunch for MVS and McCole Hardman. I actually have MVS tagged. As you see, the blue dot is me. My tags in lineup HQ, but I have the same idea as you with Hardman. It's like, why are we giving all of the production to Juju and all of the ownership to Juju? This guy hasn't been good for 3 years. Like, when's the last time a guy comes back from the grave at not 1 year, not 2 years, 3 seasons, and he hasn't been good? And it's not like people are just saying, oh, maybe it was injuries, it was Big Ben. Deontay, producer Rob is behind the scenes. He's a big MVS guy. I know he's a big MVS guy, so he doesn't want to drive up the MVS ownership. But MVS and Hardman are where I want to live on the Chiefs. Like, if they they can get there without even earning a huge part of the target share, but they also, because they're big play threats. But what if like these are like 20% target share players with Patrick Mahomes for mega cheap? That means Juju's dust, maybe Kelsey's dust, and these guys are just absolute smashes. So that's my big takeaway from this game. I would be willing to maybe eat Hollywood with like Mahomes MVS or Mahomes McCole or something like that, because I don't think kind of your collective ownership will be too much. Anything else on this one?
No, agree with that last point you made. I think it's completely fine to play Hollywood chalk with McCole or MVS. So
what about quarterback? Really quick. Obviously, it's the easy thing to just say, oh, play your quarterback with your stack, or whatever. But we have all this money to play all these elite guys, and they're like all, outside of Josh Allen here for us to play. And the ownership is not really it's flat-ish from a projection standpoint, but I think when we turn over the cards, like some of these guys here are going to fall lower than maybe we expect. My current kind of bet, I'm curious what you think, is actually Lamar falls behind. And so he's the guy I'm most interested in among the elite guys for tournaments. I think there's no way Mahomes comes in lower. I don't think that there's a way that Hurts comes in lower, and then Kyler just gets tied to that game, and so people be like, oh, I'll just play Kyler instead of Mahomes. And then you have Lamar with no running backs against the Jets. Now he's got the contract incentive. If everybody saw, he turned down a big deal this morning, or the report was from this morning. Lamar's kind of the quarterback that stands out to me. What do you think about kind of these top 6-7 options?
Yeah, at the beginning of the week, I kind of thought it was going to be Herbert was the guy that slipped through the cracks a little bit, and I don't think that's the case. I think that game will be stacked too much. And on FanDuel, Mike Williams is only 6,600, so extremely easy stacking candidate with Justin Herbert. And like you said, Lamar's kind of that guy. Then I don't know, like I don't love him, but I mean it's the reasons you outlined that makes him a good play. He's gonna have the lower ownership. Obviously, can do it with his legs. The issue is the stacking. I do think Lamar to Mark Andrews will not be low owned.
Yeah, right.
Lamar to Bateman would be the play then, and like I actually like Bateman quite a bit. I just don't know. It's kind of hard. It feels like a stretch on this slate. I want to be into the idea, and I am into the idea of low owned Lamar. But going heavy on Lamar Bateman just feels like a little bit of a stretch on this slate. Well,
you're going to hate me then because I love this. I love the Lamar Bateman stack. I definitely agree with you, though. It's tough. It's tricky. You certainly don't feel comfortable clicking it in. But where I would kind of where I not necessarily feel comfortable, but feel optimistic from both a projection and an upside scenario is if you take a step back and think about what the Ravens have done kind of in this offseason. They trade away Hollywood Brown, who is now the chalk, kind of funny, to the Cardinals. They draft a bunch of tight ends, and they don't bring in any wide receivers. And so Bateman is the guy. I mean, maybe you like Devin Duvernay or James Prochet or something like that. I hate to break it to you, they're not going to earn a bunch of targets. It's just not the way. Devin Duvernay is like the Isaiah McKenzie of the Ravens, right? A little bit of a gadgety type player. And I think they wanted to go back to the old school Ravens. We're going to run a bunch of tight ends. We're going to run the ball. We're going to MVP Lamar season, right? And so what happened in MVP Lamar season? It was Andrews and it was Hollywood. Now Bateman just got dropped into the Hollywood spot, but we haven't seen it yet. And so it doesn't feel very comfortable. And he's also right in this Michael Pittman sweet spot. And you're going to get Michael Pittman at, whatever, depending upon your contest, 25, 30%. And you're going to get Bateman at whatever, 5 to 10%. And he's almost like quasi leverage, like you said, on Mark Andrews. And I think what they've dictated to us is that those are the two focal points of the offense. Somebody's here in chat talking about Isaiah Likely. It is at least a mildly interesting that Nick Boyle is inactive. That's a milli play for me. If you want to go absolutely super crazy in a $5 milli maker contest, go ahead with Isaiah Likely. I think he's good at football, but he also could literally just like never play. But I think what all this indicates for me is that Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews are the target share hogs on this team. Yep. And so I'm going to lean into that a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. We know where the targets are going.
That's funny.
We do see a lot of Isaiah. The Isaiah Likely hype is real. Domino.
He's the
Domino
most.
was on this like way before. He was hyping him to me earlier this week. He's like, man, I like Isaiah Likely. I did a show with Blender this week. And he accidentally jammed Isaiah Likely into like 40% of the lineup. So like maybe it's a sign that Isaiah Likely is like the guy. There was one build on DK where you needed a 2,500 receiver.
And oh my gosh.
Like
optimal build? Like an optimal build?
Kind of, yeah. There was one because it let you get Marquise Brown. So again, this would be like a cash game build, but it let you get Marquise Brown. It let you get Pittman, Aaron Jones, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey. Like it lets you load up elsewhere. But the thing is, like, so we talked a lot about what teams run as personnel, and we know there will be two tight ends on the field a lot.
Yep.
For the Ravens, I assume Josh Oliver is still a thing. So
he played behind Likely in the preseason. He played behind Likely in the preseason, so it's tricky.
Yeah, so it just depends on how they want to, and if they view Oliver as a better blocker than Likely.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to kind of determine how the snaps shake out. But you kind of said it. I don't think it's like the worst thing to waste $5 on or 20 if you're doing the milli or 20.
I mean, I'm going to do it now. Literally, if all of chat, the most mentioned person, we've been talking for 35 minutes, and the most mentioned person is Isaiah Likely. Like I can't not play at least one team. Quick pivot. While we're talking kind of some game by game stuff, I know I hit the quarterback. I do want to not miss this because we have got 15 minutes left or so. Action Jackson asked, did you go over Chargers Raiders, which kind of correlates to our quarterback talk with Justin Herbert, where I agree with you. I don't Herbert's not going to get steamed because of Mahomes and because of Hurts, but it's like the most clear and obvious stack, like you said, especially on FanDuel. You just Herbert, Mike Williams, you want to play Devontae, you want to play Waller, whatever. You don't have to play a bring back if you don't want to, but that's a game that obviously looks appealing. But is there any good way for you think, to target this game in tournaments?
It would be more DK based because I think we kind of mentioned we'll see a lot of people taking stabs at cheap receivers there. And Josh Palmer's only 3,800.
Yeah. And
so I like him quite a bit. Gerald Everett, Jared Cook wasn't necessarily dust in this offense. He saw, I think it was like a 13% target share last year. So if you're off of Kelsey builds, Gerald Everett is not a fun play, but he's also not like a terrible play as in cheap tight end builds. Again, I think on FanDuel it's pretty clearly it's just going to be like Mike Williams jammed in with Justin Herbert. But elsewhere, I think you can get a little bit more creative with some of the lower priced options.
Would you play any Devontae at his price? On DraftKings, especially on both sides, but on DraftKings especially, he's the highest priced wide receiver, I think, on DraftKings, which is tough, but it's also kind of keeping his ownership in check. If we're wrong about that, it was just the Aaron Rodgers and Devontae connection. Mike Williams catches a bomb, and maybe Devontae's still getting his 16 targets or whatever from Derek Carr. Are you interested in him?
Yeah, and I mean, we talk a lot about uncertainty, and the general consensus is that, hey, Devontae is not going to be able to repeat the production. He's not going to be the same receiver that he was in Green Bay. I think that's the likeliest scenario. I think that's the likeliest outcome because Darren Waller's really good. Hunter Renfro's good. But, if he jumps into a 30% target share like he's had in Green Bay in game one, then we're going to be wondering why we didn't play more Devontae. I think he's completely fine as a tournament option.
It is kind of interesting that I guess it's just because he didn't change teams, but we talked about CMC. Even though a lot has changed for CMC, they also brought in the dustiest offensive coordinator of all time, Ben McAdoo. They replaced Joe Brady, who's the architect of the Joe Burrow LSU offense, brilliant, young, forward-thinking offensive coordinator. They replaced him with Ben McAdoo. Matt Rule has proven to be a dunce, and then brought in Baker Mayfield, who knows what that even means for CMC, but we're comfortable just clicking in CMC no matter what. But Devontae moves to a situation that is it that different than Green Bay? I mean, Aaron Rodgers is
better. I mean, the target competition is obviously worse, but overall you could argue it's a neutral move.
Right. So what if they score more? What if they run faster pace? What if they throw at a higher rate? Right. I mean, Aaron Rodgers bleeds the play clock down to 0.1 seconds every single time and then snaps it. It's just Devontae got such a high target share. But what if that continues? And so again, another example, I don't have a lot of Devontae. For full disclosure, I'm playing 16 total lineups. So, I'm not playing 150 or whatever. I don't think I have a Devontae team yet. We'll have a little time before we get to the end of the slate. But as of now, I don't. One superstar expensive wide receiver that I wanted to talk about, which is also another kind of fun game, is Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is the guy who I do want to be jamming, and I am personally jamming. And I think that game's kind of interesting too. Nobody is really playing Burrow, and he actually provides a little bit of a discount. And I think from an archetype perspective, he's kind of like Mahomes, only runs a little bit, but big play passing option. And he has the best weapons in the NFL, give or take. Jamar Chase is the guy who I think, just because T and Boyd are there and the matchup is mediocre, right? It's not a horrible matchup. It's not a great matchup, that he's just falling by the wayside. And we know that how many times do we get the Jamar Chase at 7,100 with the 50-point ceiling and he's sub 10% owned, So what do you think about that game, Jamar Chase, etc.?
Yeah, I like Chase. I mean, I think the kind of the book on the Steelers is defense, good up front, probably going to struggle a bit in the secondary. So we saw it last year with Cincinnati. They kind of came out and it made sense. They were a little bit more conservative with their play calling to start the season. Burrow returning from injury, like it all makes sense. So it'll be interesting to see if they kind of stick to the ramped up version of the offense that they had more towards the end of the season where they had a higher pass rate. If that's the case, Chase is a great play. I think we're almost seeing like T. Higgins projected at higher ownership. It's kind of like
that's
a price
crazy
thing.
Yeah, but that's just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a price thing. It's not easy to play Jamar Chase. He's more in the price range where it feels like you're foregoing more if you click him. So like Justin Jefferson is right there on both sites, which makes the decision a little bit more.
Do you prefer Jefferson? Just because we haven't talked about him.
I do. I do straight up, but I think Jefferson's going to be double Chase in ownership, triple Chase in ownership. And they probably don't. Let me see what we even have them projected. They can't project that much differently. On FanDuel, we have 16.34 for Jefferson and 14.45 for Jamar Chase. Great tournament play for sure. And we have them almost projected double ownership on FanDuel, Jefferson over Chase. I think both are great tournament options. The thing is, the tough point I think about these Cincinnati builds is where are we going with the bringbacks? Because it's hard to predict where targets are going to go. George Pickens would kind of be fun if he was cheaper. But he's not free. I was kind of hoping he would be min priced, and then we're talking about if he's the best min priced option at receiver.
Yes,
but he's 1,100 more on DK. He's 5,200 on FanDuel. It just doesn't stand out at all. So the bring back options are a little bit more difficult if you're trying to stack that game or do a Cincy stack, which again I think is another reason though why we'll see lower ownership in that game in general. Yeah,
I do like still Pickens sprinkled in again. He's maybe like an Isaiah Likely-esque in that frame of mind for large field tournaments or something, because I agree with you, the price is a little bit difficult, and it's not just the price in week one when there's all these good plays, right? We've talked about a ton of players, and there's a ton of players we won't even get to today that are good. I mean, look at the top of the list. Like, I know the weather's bad, but like Deebo Samuel is playing and George Kittle is inactive. Like if Deebo gets like a 40% target share, I know that's probably only like 30 passes, but like would anybody be surprised? And the Bears stink, but we're just not going to be able to get to all these guys. I like Tyreek. I like, we haven't talked a lot about AJ Brown because we were mostly talking about kind of tournament leverage and stuff, but there's all these guys. Yeah. AJ Brown is a smash to me. Like if you're not thinking about like, I don't want to play the Hurts AJ Brown thing. I want to play some AJ Brown basically. But there's so many players that just giving up a roster spot to George Pickens is almost as important as the price thing. It's like 4K versus 3K is not that big of a deal, but you need the roster spot because there's so many high upside plays. The Steelers thing is interesting. I think Deontay is my favorite. Maybe Freiermuth, but that's like a tight end thing. It's like he could fall in the end zone twice, as the bring back. I think it's Deontay for me. Again, the continual theme of this episode being he was second in the NFL in targets last year. And I know that was Big Ben. Trust me, nobody is more anti-Big Ben than me. It was a disaster. But like, what if he's just that? What if his target earning ability is just his target earning ability? And we're saying, oh, it was just Big Ben. We can't play Deontay anymore. He's reasonably priced on both sides. And if the Bengals score 40 and Deontay gets 16 targets, would you really be that surprised? I wouldn't. So I think he's my preference. Really quickly, I want to hit tight end, and then we got about 5 minutes, and we'll scroll through some of the comments and stuff because people have questions. I'm not ignoring you guys. I promise. We have 50 minutes to cover like a million different things. So tight end, we talked about Kelsey, talked a little bit about Andrews, and a little bit about Pitts. But outside of like those guys, maybe a little Goddard, there's like no ownership, which creates like 15 tight ends that we can get at 2% owned. Do any of those other guys stick out to you?
Not as a top overall option, but I have to stick with my Swellcast takes. So sometimes full disclosure behind the scenes, terrible takes. 90% of the time they're off the cuff. It's early in the week. It's stupid to flag plant anybody early in the week, so it's kind of just off the cuff. And then sometimes I'll have a take and be like, oh shit, this is actually a good take. And then I'll continue to kind of tout him throughout the week. Mo Cox is that guy for me.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Spicy.
I mean, so Jack Doyle's out of town. We've got the preseason reports that Cox is kind of taking up those routes. The biggest issue here is I actually think Jelani Wood. I haven't seen an act. I actually think Jelani Woods and Kylan Grayson are like good players.
Yeah,
but I still think they're probably raw. But I think they're talented and can kind of produce if given out the opportunity. But Mo Cox, so let's say he's on the field now for the majority of the snaps. He was kind of typically a red zone guy, which again I would take even if he just kept that red zone role. If he happens to fall, you mentioned it. I forget who the guy was. Freiermuth. If he falls into the end zone,
same thing. Yep.
Mo Cox, same thing. If he falls into except this time, if he falls into the end zone 2 times, you're getting leverage off of Jonathan Taylor. You're getting leverage off of Michael Pittman. So again, it was kind of an off the cuff take early in the week, but now I think it's actually like a legitimate tournament option.
I love this. I think Granson is going to steal some of the pass work type stuff.
Yeah,
Mo Ali I think Granson is a pretty good player. And I think, you said he's definitely raw second year tight end. Mo Ali is such a good blocker that they will keep him in. He's actually kind of a good receiver too. He's like crazy efficient. He's good at everything, honestly. Also, if anyone doesn't know, played college basketball, did not play college football, went to VCU. They play in the same conference as St. Louis University. If you haven't noticed, I have all this St. Louis crap behind me. Went and got front row tickets to VCU SLU when Mo Ali was there. And I probably should have predicted that he was going to play NFL tight end. He's like inbounding the ball in front of you. And I'm like, this dude is a monster. Absolute monster. Freak athlete. So I'm pro Mo Ali. The only concern for me is definitely but if we're talking about all this uncertainty, what if he does run like most of the routes? He's an absolute smash. And I mean, like you said, double leverage. That's double leverage. That's perfect. My guy is actually in the same game. Brevin Jordan.
I like it, yeah.
Who is we're all expecting the Colts to smash. And I mean, I don't see how the Colts don't score at least a decent amount of points. We talked about Dameon Pierce as maybe an option people are ignoring on the Texans. I think Brevin Jordan is also an option people are ignoring on the Texans. We're just giving the targets to Brandon Cooks. And of course, he should lead the team in targets. But, unfortunately, John Mechie, is out for the year or probably out for the year with his illness. And they don't have anybody over the middle of the field. And so if the Colts get out to a lead and you're just, Davis Mills checking down and stuff, he's not going to check down to Brandon Cooks the whole game. Brevin Jordan ran, almost all the routes in the preseason with the first team, and they've talked about him as like the slot receiver replacement because they don't have anybody else after Mechie is out. So he would be my guy, I think, at tight end. But there's a lot of options. Hayden Hurst is kind of interesting. We talked about Freiermuth. I think Tunyon is reasonably interesting. Yeah, I think Tunyon, especially on FanDuel, the dude is a touchdown scorer for sure.
Right, he'll get the target share. What I find interesting, I kind of think you'll agree with me because we have similar mindsets. Like Irv Smith is the guy that is showing is the projection guy, and he's the guy that's going to be owned in that price range. Yeah, and I think it takes a lot of assumptions to get there. And I do feel people hear Irv Smith over these other names, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he's the better play." Who knows? Why? Yeah, why? And it's mostly people that just look at the projections. Hey, say this Irv Smith's the better play. I'm playing him. So I do think Irv Smith is getting a lot of the low price tight end ownership, and I don't really know why. So yeah, Irv Smith wouldn't be a guy he's not going to be extremely high owned, but I would be. I'm more inclined to play some of these other guys we talked about than Irv Smith.
And there's so many options that just give me the 1% and 2% guys as opposed to the whatever 5, 6, 8, 10% guys, because they're really all the same. Honestly, they may project a little different, but they're basically all the same. Okay, 2 quick things. Going to hit just a couple of these quick questions because we got to get out of here. And I'm going to ask Tuttle mentioned his terrible take. We always wrap this show up with like a what's the guy that's going to be in the GPP winning lineup or something, some kind of a bold take. Colton says Mixon, Olave, or Gibson Higgins for single entry. It's definitely Gibson Higgins for me.
Yeah, I agree there. Oh, I mean, yeah, I'm not going to expand.
Yeah, it's any love for Robert Woods? Is this Corey? Blink twice if you're Soccer Dave's burner.
So we didn't talk about their situation at all.
True.
And I don't like them as an offense. But Woods could walk into a pretty hefty target share there. Like it's reasonable. It's not a guy I'm playing a lot, but it's a reasonable take.
If Robert Woods, God, I shouldn't have even pulled up this comment. If Robert Woods has 100 yards and a touchdown, would I be surprised today? Honestly, no. So I don't really hate it. I think that's almost it. We touched on Olave. It's definitely London for me. I know the matchup is not great for the Falcons, but London for sure. And then talked about a lot of the punt wide receivers on DraftKings specifically. Jahan Dotson for 3.4, just because he's 400 more, he's not the stone min. No one will play him, but he's a starting wide receiver who, like, I don't know. Again, if he led the what are they, the Commanders in targets, would you be that surprised?
No, and so I think he was actually going to be decently owned, but then we had some of these Green Bay guys that I think are popping now. If you think Dotson is going to be decently owned, Terry McLaurin, no one's playing Terry McLaurin at all. Yeah, I like him quite a bit for tournaments.
Love that. And then shout out. I just wanted to shout out to Cam because if you had to pick, I think we talked about Dortch, Dobbs, Wandale for 3K. Who are you playing?
In tournaments, I'd take Dortch because I think he's going to be the lowest owned of the bunch, and I think he's just as reasonable of a play as those other guys.
Love it. Okay, then now piggybacking on that, who is the guy you have to have today? Who's in the GPP winning lineup that is maybe unexpected, that just totally smashes?
Not unexpected. I think total smash. Jamino's talked me into him a little bit. AJ Brown. I'm the AJ Brown train.
Do you think he's just not going to be owned enough too? I'm trying to figure out.
He'll be owned, but I don't think he'll be enough.
Okay, I'm massaging my final teams, and I'm smashing. I'll give two guys because this is giving away my one guy. But Miles Sanders was going to be my guy. He scored 0 touchdowns last year. My bold take is he scores 2. He has 100 yards and 2 touchdowns today. Is my kind of hot take with that team. But I also don't want if AJ Brown had 103, would I be surprised today? No. So I don't want to leave without AJ Brown. My other one. We talked about the Chiefs. You mentioned McColl, who I really like the McColl take. It's MVS. MVS 102 today, earns more targets than people think. Juju is dust. Kelsey and Juju also actually have low key the worst matchup for the Chiefs against the Cardinals defense stinks. But if you're gonna have a matchup against them, they have the worst ones. I think MVS catches a couple bombs today. We're out of here. For me, producer Rob behind the scenes and Tuttle, the people seem to enjoy Tuttle, so we'll try to force Tuttle to come back here a couple Sunday mornings. That's it. GPP Final Takes Week 1, and I will see you guys next week.
Here back in the fantasy bar. It's football season, and we are back with 6 of my favorite plays on FanDuel and DraftKings, including a cheap running back I think is in a great spot. A quarterback I think can finish as the highest scoring one without all the ownership. Some of my favorite correlation plays, and of course, my favorite play of the week. Who we talking about? Belly up to the fantasy barn. Find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 1 edition. NFL is back, and we are here 6 guys fresh off the tap for you on FanDuel and DraftKings for Week 1. Thank you so much for stopping by the Fantasy Bar and checking out the video. If you have been here over all the years of the Fantasy Bar, you know the drill. 6 picks each and every week. If you are new to the video and the Fantasy Bar, welcome in. We are glad to have you here. Now, before we get into the plays, couple things. First off, if you're watching on YouTube, take a second, click that thumbs up button. That's the tip jar here. As I always say in the fantasy bar, this video coming to you free of charge. That's all we ask in return. You do that, you subscribe to the channel, get notified when these videos are coming out. Going to be doing 2 videos for the NFL each and every week, a 6-pack video of DFS plays, also a sports betting video with 2 of my favorite NFL bets each and every week. So make sure you're subscribed. You don't miss out on any of the content. And speaking of sports betting, guys, you got to go check out scoresandodds.com/beer. That link in the description of the video. Tons of great information there on every single NFL game. And it's not just football. If you're still grinding baseball, all of the other sports as well. The ability to compare odds across all the different sports books, see who's betting on who, and premium picks from some of your favorite RotoGrinders personalities on these games, myself included, will be providing you with NFL picks this season. Tons there. Go and check it out today. Scoresandodds.com/beer. Again, that link in the description of the video. All right, let's get into it. Week 1, always a fun week. Lots of big tournaments out there. Potential overlay brewing as well. And we'll stick to the main slate here with my favorite plays. Let's start at the wide receiver position, A.J. Brown of the Eagles. Now, still weird to say the Eagles here. A.J. Brown, longtime Tennessee Titan, but he comes over in that draft day trade here to the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think this is going to be a smash season for Brown and the Eagles. Last time these two teams met up, game was in Detroit last season. Eagles absolutely dominated this Detroit Lions team 44-6. I know there's a lot of excitement around the Lions right now, coming off of Hard Knocks, and a team a lot of people are betting on to outproduce their win total here. But I think Philly, just the much better team here in this one. I think what we're going to see here, as far as ownership goes, we don't know what this offense is going to look like. We know Philadelphia can be very run heavy with that great offensive line. Questions on Jalen Hurts. Can he get it done through the air? I think that's going to help us in the ownership department. I think people are going to have questions on this one, and they're going to look elsewhere to some of these higher total games that we have on the slate. But this matchup, absolutely ideal. And Philly going to want to get their new toy involved right away. Detroit, 5th most receptions allowed, 2 wide receivers last season, 2nd most receiving yards allowed. And I don't see any changes in that defense that are going to get them better here. Maybe offensively, they're going to be able to compete, keep this game close. I think A.J. Brown going to absolutely dominate this secondary of the Detroit Lions. All right, let's get to the running back position. Tons of options here. We're going to go on this cheaper side of things with Chase Edmonds of the Dolphins. So another guy that changes teams here. They paid him a lot of money. I know Raheem Mostert going to work in, very familiar with McDaniel and that San Francisco system here. But Edmonds is the guy, and you're going to see low ownership for a few reasons. We have tons of running backs, tons of studs on this slate. No bye week set, so lots of choices for people to be made. There's a lot of cheaper wide receiver options on the slate here, especially on DraftKings. That's going to lead to a lot of Christian McCaffreys, Dalvin Cooks, guys like that in the lineup. Can Chase Edmonds compete with those guys? Maybe the ceiling isn't as high, but I think he can get close enough and really drastically outproduce his salary, which is what we're looking for with our plays. He also has that questionable tag. That's going to scare some people away. So should see minuscule ownership here on Chase Edmonds. These prices seem a little bit too low. I mean, this is a guy I would not be surprised we're paying $7K for, and that's one of the things I love to look at early in the season. Who are guys we're buying low on? What are their prices going to look like towards the middle of the season? I feel this is the lowest we're going to get on Chase Edmonds, so don't wait. Let's buy in now here against New England, a defense that, yes, can be good, but they struggle against running backs, specifically pass-catching running backs. Last season, bottom 10 in rushing yards allowed, receptions, and receiving yards to the running back position. So no, Miami brought in Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Chase Edmonds still going to be a big part of that passing game as well. Good matchup here, home favorite, checks that box for us, and simply too cheap and too low owned Chase Edmonds, one of my favorite running backs here on the week. All right, let's get to the quarterback position. I promise you a guy with big time upside and little ownership. We're going Lamar Jackson of Baltimore. Now this contract situation with Lamar Jackson, it's all we've heard about all offseason.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Crunch Time for this Week 1 edition here at RotoGrinders. I am Brit Devine, joined by Mr. STL Cards 84, Justin Van Zuiden, and Tim. We got TastefulTides in here. Tim, I haven't had a chance to work with you yet. Welcome, and happy to have you on board, dude.
Yeah, this is going to be so exciting. We have a lot of options today. It's great to do a show with you guys both today.
Yeah, Justin, there's a lot to do. Sports betting, DFS, prop sites, a million different ways I'm playing today's slate. Happy for it to be Week 1, just a half hour away.
Yeah, for sure. Always exciting time of year, and it's a pretty miserable day here in the Midwest, so that weather's going to probably affect the Bears game today, and nothing better to do for me than to stay inside and watch some football. So excited to get it rolling.
Yeah, let's get right into this. I didn't have this set up. I'm sorry, Devin, but I'll share my screen for you guys if Devin wants to bring that up, if he has the capability. But I guess let's just jump right into this. I don't know who wants to help me with cash. Who wants to talk tournaments here today? Justin, you want to?
Go ahead, Tim. You can pick what you want to do.
I'll do cash.
All right. So let's start with you. We'll do FanDuel. We'll do DraftKings. We'll sort of do position by position. I'm basically looking at two dudes on FanDuel at quarterback. Tim, I got Lamar Jackson. I got, oh my goodness, his
You got
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts,
Yeah.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, these are like the only two. We need to pay up at quarterback. I think it's going to be a theme the entire season. These cheap quarterbacks don't have the upside of these either elite arm quarterbacks like a Mahomes and Justin Herbert, or the ultra dual threat quarterbacks. This has pretty much changed last year. It's what I'm employing this year. Got to play these big guns at quarterback, in my opinion.
Yeah, the opportunity cost at quarterback today is pretty massive. So on DK, on cash, I think it's pretty easy that it's Jalen Hurts. It's a pretty, that $500 actually means something today. The $500 discount. There isn't like that kind of like super go-to low wide receiver 3 on DK that we're kind of used to seeing midway through the season. We don't really have that today. So I think saving that $500 is pretty meaningful. And I think that the Eagles are going to have no troubles at all getting through this Lions defense. So I think Jalen Hurts is my preferred cash game options on DK.
Yeah, I think even on FanDuel, you could probably throw him in over there, or Lamar Jackson are probably the two I'm looking at. I like this Eagles game I mentioned on Crunch Time for Baseball we did yesterday, Justin. I've laddered this all the way up to plus 13 or minus 13.5 for the Eagles today. What are we doing for the tournament perspective? If guys, it's going to be really spread out this week because we don't have that 4K 25 touch running back. We don't have that. And most of the pricing, we didn't have any injuries really in the preseason. So tournaments are going to get really spread out. How do you differentiate, or do you even need to worry about it this week?
I think you certainly can. I mean, you get the guy that the key is going to be, that QB wide receiver combo. If somebody happens to go off for, and catch 3 touchdowns or something, that can be a slate breaker. So I think you don't necessarily get leverage per se with a lot of these quarterback selections, because almost all of the good ones are going to be around 4, 5, 6% owned. And it's unlikely that the chalk guys completely tank, right? Like Hurts and Lamar with their rushing floors. It's unlikely in favorable matchups that they'll just have a complete, terrible game. But if you get somebody at lower ownership that maybe has an upside performance, throws 4 touchdowns or something like that, certainly that can give you a little bit of a leg up in tournaments if things are tightly contested. So I think the option would be to spend up for somebody that's a little bit different, which I didn't expect Herbert to kind of be in that realm at the beginning of the week. Right now, we've got him at 9% on FanDuel. We've got him at 7% on DraftKings. And that game has the highest total of the week. So 52 points. I certainly think that Herbert is kind of that pay up guy. And I think you can go cheaper in tournaments if, you hit all the spend ups at the other positions right, even if you're not getting a massive, ceiling game from the quarterback. Maybe you get a similar point per dollar performance as some of the top guys. Jameis Winston against Atlanta is a guy that's on the radar today. I'm off of Trey Lance with the weather conditions there. And then, Trevor Lawrence is kind of my YOLO GPP play today. You certainly don't want to do that on a bunch of lineups, but 2% ownership matchup against, outside of a couple guys, a defense that's beatable. I think, Lawrence and that Jacksonville offense with a revamped receiving group will at least be a little more competitive this year. So give me those guys as some tournament pivots. Maybe throw a Kirk Cousins into that mix too.
Couple ways to run back that Jacksonville stack. You can play Gibson if you think Washington runs away with it, and then you can run it back with McLaurin, a deep bomb from Carson Wentz. Probably better than a deep bomb from Taylor Heineke. As bad as Carson Wentz is, I think McLaurin could get downfield today. I bet his over longest reception, I think it was 22.5, and his over yards. And you can go get those on the FanDuel Sportsbook if you are not, or if you are in a state that allows sports betting. If you bet $5, I believe you can get $150 from FanDuel, regardless of if your bet wins or loses. So make sure to check out the FanDuel Sportsbook.
If I could, real quick, Britt.
Yeah, what do you got?
So I just wanted to touch on Kyler Murray real quick on FanDuel.
Mm-hmm.
He's only $200 more than Hurts, and that game has a 54-point total. I think that the Cardinals are going to be playing catch up quite a bit in that game. So I'm actually, I'm a single entry cash game player. I'm actually considering playing Kyler over Hurts on FanDuel, but on DK I'm playing Hurts.
Yeah, I don't mind Kyler at all today. The dual threat, big arm quarterbacks that can put up a lot of points. That's going to be a theme, I think, for cash games the entire season. Let's go to running back, Tim. Lots to choose from this week. On DraftKings, you've got what I would consider a discounted Christian McCaffrey dual threat. He looks like the guy everybody's going to be using. Do you agree with that? And then who else are we targeting to maybe fill in with him on DK?
Yeah, you're absolutely playing Christian McCaffrey in cash games today. That's easy. You just plug him in. I'm playing him on my single entry team. I think that you can be overweight him in GPPs. The other guy I wanted to mention is Aaron Jones. I think that he's going to get a lot of receptions today. I love that game environment. He's only $6,700. The wide receiver situation in Green Bay is very, unpredictable. And I think that Rodgers trusts him a lot, and he's going to get a ton of checkdowns today. So Aaron Jones is one of my favorite plays on the entire slate, not even price considered. And then on the cheap end, I like Chase Edmonds quite a bit. I know that it's not traditionally a solid matchup, but I think that price is really good. So those are my three favorite running backs for cash games.
Yeah, I like Edmonds. Maybe not for cash for me personally, but I did bet his over, I think it was 59.5 combined rushing receiving yards if you're looking for a sports bet out there. I want to get real quick, Tim, your take on Saquon Barkley. He's projected as the second highest owned running back. He is reasonably inexpensive on both sites today. Are we rolling with him? I currently have him in, I believe, on both sites. Am I a donkey?
You're certainly not a donkey. I might be the donkey. I'm not playing him. So that could be an absolutely horrible play on my part. I'm gonna let him prove it. After 2 years of being awful, this Giants team is awful. I'm just gonna let him, let him show it to me. If I'm late on him, so be it. I completely understand the projection. I completely understand the ownership, but for me personally, for my money, he's a fade for me.
All right. And then the other guy I think is getting some love, as basically the cheapest viable running back. I know you like Edmonds, who I think is a really nice swerve away from Dameon Pierce. What are you expecting from Pierce this week? Looks like he's probably the guy. And I think I bet his over rushing attempts was like 11.5 or something. I thought that was a little low. Do you like him this week as a cheap play? I know you're on Edmonds, but your overall thoughts on Pierce, someone people will be using this week.
For me, that's about game script. If the Texans can hang in this game, then that's fine. I feel like if they're going to get blown out, he's going to get played right off the field. So for me, I'm out on him. Again, I understand the projection. I understand the price, and I understand that we need salary. But my pivot is Edmonds for $400 more. That's just my take. I like that game a little bit better. I don't think for me, I know a lot of people are thinking Houston can hang in this game, but for me, that's not it.
All right, Justin, tournaments. I mean, outside of McCaffrey and Barkley, maybe we can even talk a little bit of FanDuel. Are you finding yourself, I know from the cash perspective, I could not find, I want the big touchdown heavy wide receivers, I think, this week on FanDuel. I think I was able to find myself enough running back value. I like the discount on Kamara over on FanDuel and even on DraftKings if you have to stoop to one of those guys instead of maybe a CMC. What are we doing? Because there's really our highest owned running back on FanDuel is 15%. I mean, sometimes these guys get to like 25, 30, 35%, and we have nobody like that. How are we handling that position this week?
Yeah, I think I think both Barkley and McCaffrey will be higher than that. We've kind of, flattened out our ownership. And what projection source do you have up?
I have so every time I refresh, it goes back between the RG premium. All right, yeah. So McCaffrey's up to 22, and we got Saquon at 23.
Yeah. So if you have the blitz up, those might be a little bit flatter on that top end, but I do agree. I think Barkley and McCaffrey will end up being a little bit higher, but not like mega chalk. We're still talking, 30% tops probably. I think there's ways you can handle this in tournaments. Like, again, the spend up to be different guys are probably Henry and maybe Dalvin Cook. I like Dalvin Cook more in game stacks. I do think that Minnesota Green Bay game is semi-stackable if you want to try to bank on where the Green Bay receptions are going to come from, who's going to catch the ball for them. If you get that right, maybe you just play Jones. But anyway, I think Cook and Henry are kind of your spend up to be different guys. I agree with the Edmonds call. I think he's a solid option in tournaments, and maybe more so on DraftKings. Somebody like Miles Sanders, who's kind of made a career out of letting DFS players down. I don't think I'm going there too much at 6,500 on FanDuel, but he is 5,400 on DraftKings, so I think he's maybe viable as a play there. I think some people are also on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, depending on how the touches are going to go in that backfield. So those are some tournament pivots.
Yeah, there's just a ton of very viable running backs, and I think this might be, from my memory, Justin, like we've never had a week where you can literally look at 15 different running backs and all think, yeah, they're all very viable. Doesn't really happen too often. This week one this year has really spread out the ownership quite a bit.
I wonder where Najee Harris is going to land in terms of ownership today. I mean, he's a guy who's pretty.
I know the Blitz does like Najee quite a bit today.
Yeah, and I wonder if he's going to be kind of the forgotten guy. With terms.
Yeah, they've played lip service to trying to reduce his touches, which I think has people a little bit nervous, but that's one of those believe it when you see it. They're playing a division rival the first game of the year. Like, if it's competitive, are they really going to try to limit 2 to 3, 4 touches away from Harris? Like, I think he's going to get his workload at least here to start the year.
I would much rather play Harris over Barkley. That's, I think that's for me pretty easy. And I'd like to play Jones over both of those guys.
All right. I want to mention to you guys, if you are looking for any sports betting information, we do have the Scores and Odds app here at RotoGrinders. You can go check it out. You can always find the best line very quickly on there for free. And if you want access to all of the picks, there is a subscription for that. And I don't know, there's like 25, 30. I lost track. I didn't put any on there. I've been too busy hammering every single prop bet I can find that I think I have an edge on. But there is about a bajillion different bets provided by the team here at RotoGrinders and Scores and Odds. All right, wide receiver cash. Let's do DraftKings first, Tim, because Michael Pittman, yes, right? That's the one. For time's sake, I don't really want to put too much analysis on that, but that's just a yes, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So outside of that, there's a couple of guys I think you can throw in there. Marquise Brown is getting a ton of steam. He's 6,200. Looks like he's going to be the lead target, has elite downfield ability as well, has a connection with Kyler Murray. There's, going to have to play catch up against Kansas City. He's in a dome. Basically everything you want, he is going for, and he's priced reasonably. He's probably the second wide receiver I'm looking at. Is that also your take as well?
Yeah, so obviously we want to get up to guys like Justin Jefferson, but I think that it being week 1 and everything is so fragile in terms of projections that I want to live in that mid range. So I just can't get up to Justin Jefferson. I can't get up to Devontae Adams because I want to get my security from Christian McCaffrey. I want to, I feel like I have to live in this mid range. So Marquise Brown, Michael Pittman, even Amon-Ra St. Brown is a good option. There's just that loaded price range in that 5 to 6K range that I think you should be living in for cash games.
Mm-hmm. Who would be? I guess you kind of gave a couple of guys. I want to throw out. I know I'm sort of looking at. You started with we don't have the 3K crappers, as Dan likes to call them here. I think there's maybe a trio of 3K crappers we can play. You got Dotson, you've got Dobbs, and you've got probably Greg Dortch from Arizona. If you were going to go that route, let's say you wanted to play Travis Kelce too, right? At tight end, he's 6,600. We'll get to that in a second, which is
right.
He's usually an $8,000 player. You got to pick one of these guys. Who is it for you? If you had to pick one.
It's actually, for me, it's Randall Cobb.
Oh, all right. Yep. He's another one.
That's actually, that's who I have rostered currently. I'm not crazy about it. I'm very uncomfortable with it. I don't have a ton of conviction behind it, but I know that if Aaron Rodgers likes you, he's going to get you the ball. So that's just, that's just where they're at in Green Bay right now. So that's who I'm most confident in this 3K range. Now, I don't have a ton of confidence in it, but that's who I would punt with.
All right. And
I think you could throw Wan'Dale Robinson in that mix too if you want to be a little risky. He was maybe getting a little bit more buzz at the beginning of the week, but really we don't know where the touches are going to go there. So, another guy, if you're taking a shot on the Packers guys, it's just as unpredictable. So, one of those guys is going to be a difference maker today because you need the value. And, if one of those guys puts up 15 points, so it's a huge edge.
Yeah. And I want to throw in a couple guys on FanDuel. Mike Williams, Christian Kirk. I know Tim mentioned Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams are always in there. I think those are additions to a FanDuel cash wide receiver core that you should possibly be looking at today. All right, so Justin, real quick, the really only high-owned wide receiver this week is Michael Pittman on DraftKings. So let's talk strategy involving him this week. I didn't do the Millionaire Maker article this year, but every year you typically always want to fade the highest owned wide receiver for, something a little bit lower down the pecking order here. If he's going to be 25% owned, what's the percentage chance he has of posting a performance that could get you towards the top of a leaderboard in these large field tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's so many options in that price range that the underweight stance is the smart move. It's not that I don't like Pittman, but they could control the game. And if they get a defensive touchdown or get a 2-score lead at halftime or something like that, maybe the passing game volume isn't there as much as you'd hope to see. And if there were no other options in that range, then I get it. But it's not like we don't have other plays. Like Juju Smith-Schuster's in that price range. AJ Brown is a little higher. Nobody's really talking about Jamar Chase this week. You've got Keenan Allen. I don't mind Michael Thomas if you want to bank on him being healthy. I think Elijah Moore is interesting for tournaments. So, I mean, I just came up with about 7 or 8 names in about 10 seconds that I think are all kind of mid-range options. Even AJ Green, if you think he can stay out there the whole game because Arizona's so shorthanded with their pass catchers. I really like Kirk. So there's just so many pivots that I think you hope that maybe Indy gets a decent lead and they can sit on the ball a little bit in the second half in tournaments and you pivot away from Pittman.
All right, we're running a little low on time. Justin, real quick, give me about a minute on a couple of your favorite stacks that you'd be looking to maybe play in, these large field tournaments today.
Yeah, as far as game stacks go, I like that Green Bay Minnesota game. You got to try to bank on where the production is coming from Green Bay, but we at least know that Minnesota's is going to be concentrated around Jefferson, Cook, Cousins. The Vegas Chargers game is probably the more glitzy overall game with the total, but I do like the Green Bay Minnesota game as well. My deep GPP quarterback receiver stack is Lawrence to Kirk. Maybe throw Etienne in there if you think, with some passing game work that he can get the job done today. Yeah, those are a few that I like in tournaments. I kind of like that Philly game as well. Maybe run it back with DeAndre Swift on the Detroit side.
All right. Let's go to tight end real quick. Tim, give me like maybe 3 or 4 cash game viable tight ends.
All right. Travis Kelce, Dallas Goedert, Irv Smith, and Gerald Everett.
All right. Yep, those are all the guys on DraftKings for me. I want to throw in probably Kyle Pitts on FanDuel at 6,000. I think he's a little bit too cheap. Kelsey's 8K. So pretty easy. If you're going to play Kelsey, get your exposure to him, at least in cash on DraftKings, and maybe mix it up. I do like Pitts over on FanDuel, just a little bit too cheap. 1 touchdown last year. I'm going to take the over on 1 touchdown for Kyle Pitts this season. Tournaments, there's, again, I don't know. Like you could throw darts on a whole bunch of different tight ends, Justin. You have a couple favorites, or do you have a stance on any of the big name tight ends?
I love Pitts. I do think that, obviously he's a mismatch. They're going to be a bad team, but they've got like no talent at wide receiver. So to me, Pitts could end up with a season like Mark Andrews had last year, just because he's a mismatch and they don't have any wide receivers. And I don't mind Andrews as well, but he's like more expensive than Kelce on DraftKings. So that would definitely be a tournament only play. But I like Pitts and Andrews. Maybe Pat Freiermuth if you're looking to go a little bit cheaper.
Let's see here. We're going to take some questions. We're going to go to the NFL Crunch Time Discord first for our premium members. If we have time, I will go to YouTube. So let's try to get in as many of these as we can in the next 5 to 10 minutes. We're going to start with the first one here. It's thoughts in a DraftKings tournament from pivoting from the Commanders defense to the Jaguars defense. And I know people are on the Bears defense with the weather there, Justin. Does that make any sense to you to do something like that today?
I mean, it's defense, right? Anything can happen. You get the lucky touchdown or something. So I'm never going to argue against a pivot to a lower owned defense. I do think the Bears and the 49ers will end up being a little bit more popular with the weather angle there. But like, if you look on DraftKings, we've got the Commanders at 18%. And like anytime you get a defense at that high of ownership, like it's kind of a crapshoot. So never mind going with a low owned defense.
All right, let's get this is from DGold280 in the Crunch Time chat. FanDuel cash. So, Tim, pay attention. Pitts in Dameon Pierce or Goddard in Edmonds. This is interesting. I have one of these combos on my current team, and I think you might want the other.
I think it's the first one.
Oh, all right. Yeah, that is the one I have, the Pitts Pierce. So you're willing to take, even though you like Edmonds, you're willing to take Pierce, probably more so as a FanDuel play, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's the one I'm currently on as well. Let's see here. T-Man just want to know, DraftKings cash. Romeo Dobbs in Washington or Randall Cobb in Chicago. So this comes down to your wide receiver and defense combination. Tim, what side are we looking at?
I think it's the Cobb side.
All right, you're willing to if the weather wasn't so bad in Chicago, would that still be your side?
Yeah.
All right, we like that. Randall Cobb as a cheap wide receiver from Tim today. Let's see here. Magma, what is Pickens' ownership on DraftKings? Do you like Pickens? I think it was like 4,100, right? So he's a little bit more expensive. We got him at 5.5% owned. What's your thoughts from a tournament perspective, Justin, on George Pickens today?
Yeah, I don't know. It's always tough because I play so much college DFS and watched him struggle because of the offense wasn't really designed to maximize his skill set. Like, he's going to be one of those guys that's always going to pop the athletic charts and the whatever you want to call all those things. But the metrics are always going to look a lot better. And until we see him produce at the NFL level, I just worry about it. And, all the talk that they've thrown out there about Trubisky looking good in camp and being a better fit in Pittsburgh, again, as a guy who lives in Bears country, I have had to endure everybody complaining about him for years. So it's just a bad combo for me with Trubisky and Pickens. until he proves it otherwise. Like he made a whole career out of not doing much in college. So I am completely off of him today, but realize there's probably a little bias there.
All right, let's go. Are we all going to look stupid for not playing week 1 Sammy Watkins this week?
Every year, right?
Is this the year the trend ends with him having big weeks? Is he, if you like Cobb, I sort of like Romeo. Tim, where does Sammy Watkins fit into this? Or is this just like a tournament only play for you?
Definitely tournament only. I think that's the easy answer.
Is he on your radar, Justin?
He is not. I am with Brit on the Green Bay pass catchers today. I like Dobbs the most of the group, but again, that is a lot of risk with those guys until we see how the snaps shake out.
All right, Nathan on YouTube want to know DraftKings cash Kirk or Thielen. That is a pretty easy Christian Kirk for me. I think we're going to sweep that across the board, right?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, we've got that one. Favorite cheap wide receiver on DraftKings? I don't know. I'll throw it to Justin, right? So, Justin, give me 30 seconds on the cheap, viable wide receivers on DraftKings.
Yeah, I mean, it's pick your favorite Green Bay guy. I don't know how cheap we're talking, but most people, when they ask these questions, they're looking for the 3K punt. I kind of rank those guys as Dobbs and then Dotson and then the rest of the Green Bay guys. And then I don't mind Wan'Dale Robinson for GPPs. Like if you've got 4K ish, maybe a Valdez Scantling or AJ Green.
I think Josh Palmer is interesting for like a Millie Maker team also, real quick.
Yep. I like that quite a bit. So they were looking, someone in Discord, the same guy want to know about Pickens. He wants a cheap 4,100 or under wide receiver that has some upside that's going to be low owned today. Justin, do you have a favorite? Looking at at least from the Blitz fantasy point projections, it looks like Randall, Cobb, Dotson, Tony are sort of Dobbs, Palmer, right? Pickens, Wan'Dale Robinson. These are all the guys topping the list there.
Pick somebody, like you can pick your favorite out of Green Bay, which again, mileage is going to vary on that, or somebody like Tony or Wan'Dale Robinson. Like how is New York going to split out their wide receiver snaps? Shepard, we don't know how healthy he is. Galladay has been very inconsistent and has battled some injuries himself. And then you got Tony and you got Wan'Dale Robinson coming in. So somebody's got to catch some balls for them. Like somebody's got upside there, but it's tough to peg exactly who it's going to be. So it'd be your favorite out of that Green Bay and Giants group for me.
All right. We got about 2 minutes left. Is there, Tim, anything you want to stress? People are clicking final seconds before. Anything you want to get over to the people?
I think if you're playing cash games, McCaffrey has got to be your first guy in and build around that. That's what I would say.
All right, Justin, you got it's a little tougher in tournaments because it really depends on how many lineups you're making, but you got any strong tournament takes?
Yeah, I think I've passed along most of them. I'm higher on Jacksonville than most today, which is never a super great feeling, but you get some of these guys owned in the single digits, and some of these mid-range wide receivers I think could be difference makers today that are in that kind of ownership range as well. Like we didn't even mention Tyreek Hill. So don't be afraid to go against the grain a little bit with some of your plays. You don't have to go super nuts, but some of your plays you can take stands on.
All right, we got lineup lock in a minute, so I'm gonna do the cutoff for DFS basically right now because anything we say is pretty much going to be inactionable. If you guys have any late swap questions, maybe from the late games, we can get to those. But I want to turn to a couple of sports betting focus things for the late games, right? Because we've got till 4:25 if we're playing the late slate or if we're trying to get any sports bets in. Justin, I know you have first, Tim, do you have access to sports books where you live?
I do not.
Oh man, you're missing out.
I do play underdog quite a bit though.
All right. I don't know. You got any props from the late games that might stick out to you?
I haven't yet. If I could make a bet today, just like on a straight bet, I do like the Chargers quite a bit.
Yeah, I have that. I had the -3.5 and the money line on that one. Justin, you got anything that's standing out to you? Minnesota Green Bay, the over in the Minnesota Green Bay 46.5. I bet that this morning. I like that. That was one I liked. I'm just trying to run through my head here. Tanyan was 2.5 receptions, I think. I got the over on that for the late game. I think that was probably a little bit too low. And what's that? I got Juju over yards. It was 46.5. That seems a little low. He's an every snap player for the Chiefs today. So those were a couple of mine. You got any, Justin?
Yeah, it's a sweep with the Chargers. I like them as well, and the over in that Green Bay Minnesota game. So we're in agreement on those being some of the best options today. I think you can hunt on the various sports books. Once the actives and inactives come out, we've seen a lot of movement kind of on those Arizona props, just not knowing who's going to be in and who's going to be out. So we're starting to get a little bit of clarity on that. But I think the big kind of question mark that remains is how much is Zach Ertz going to play. So if news starts to break on that, maybe you get the overs for some of those other Arizona pass catchers because they are pretty decimated with that group and with their star obviously suspended.
Yeah, Tim, I'm going to throw this to you. So I want to have a late swap theory question today, maybe for those. So guys like Marquise Brown, he's going to be very popular. He's in the late slate. Saquon Barkley is going to be in the late slate. People are going to play the Green Bay wide receivers because they're cheap. Derrick Henry. If you miss on the early games today and you have to, you're dead. You're 100 out of 100 and you're 50-50 and you've missed on 2 or 3 spots in the early games and you have Saquon and you have Marquise Brown. Can you think of anybody you might want to pivot to that's also in the late games that might make a reasonable replacement? You're hoping a prayer. You're hoping they can outdo those guys.
So I think the number I see this mistake all the time. People just give up on their teams. Like
No. We don't do that here.
I know, but I see it all the time in GPPs and cash games. So I don't have anybody particular 2v2 or 1v1, but just if you're dead, start eating salary and pivot off the chalky guys. If you're like, oh, I know Hollywood Brown's gonna be chalk, don't just get off him for somebody else. I see way too much surrendering of teams, when the 4:00 game starts. And I always wonder why that is.
Justin, if you had, I think I just totally ruined whatever I had going on my lineup HQ screen. But if you pretend you had Saquon in your lineups, right, and you're dead, who's a pivot you could switch to?
CEH.
Yeah, I mean, if you so Saquon, let's see, I've got FanDuel up here. So if I only sort by the late games, and Saquon on FanDuel is 6,800. So you've got Dillon there, you've got Edwards-Helaire there. Those would be the two guys that, sure, Dillon is $700 less. CEH is $1,000 less, but you're also getting a third or a fourth of the ownership. And, Dillon scored a couple touchdowns. CEH could have a nice all around game. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you can go from
if you have Hollywood Brown, I don't know what the ownership on Renfro is going to be, but he would be a good pivot. And if you're worried about that, then go to Thielen.
Yeah, Thielen 2 touchdowns could happen any week.
Yeah, and then it's kind of gross, but say Juju is going to be popular, and the guy ahead of you has 5,200. Go down to Sterling Shepard. I mean, it's not great, but at least you're live. Yeah,
and I think AJ Green's someone too I don't hate today. There's just no one else to really catch balls in Arizona that has an NFL track record out there other than Ertz, Brown, and AJ Green today, and James Conner, right? So it should be a pretty concentrated offense. All right, I think that's going to about do it for this show today. It was fun filling in. I don't think I'll be here next week, but always fun doing the shows here on RotoGrinders. I wish everybody luck. Has there been a touchdown scored yet? Has anyone returned to kickoff? Is there anything? Is there anything that's happened? I gotta open up all the apps and start sweating a bajillion different things going on today. I hope. The one thing I hope for this year is now that streaming is becoming more and more popular, I hope the feeds for streaming keep up with the cable TV streams, because isn't it worse?
It's not going to happen. It's never going to happen.
The worst thing is when it's 2 minutes behind, especially if you use a Roku to stream your cable, you're 2 minutes behind everything that's happening. I hate it. Technology, Make it. I need to know everything needs to be on the same feed all the time across the whole country. It'll never happen, Justin, but that is a big annoyance to me.
When you get the touchdown gets spoiled by Twitter or something, or you
you get the pop up on the app like 3 minutes before it happens. You're like, what? Yeah, I mean, I'll take the fantasy points anyway. But if you're watching the game or sweating it is a little annoying. Anyway, we're gonna get out of here. I think we're gonna. Devin, can you pop in here? What do we have for the later slates?
Devin's
tonight?
not here, so Devin's gonna disappear. We got a special guest.
Well, I'm much more handsome than Devin, though, is the good thing.
What is going on here? Who is this man?
There is a 7:00 stream tonight afterwards, which I don't know exactly who's going to be on it, but there is a 7:00. Exactly. So
we've got a showdown slate show, and then on Monday we got stuff going on for Monday for the Monday night game too, probably.
Yeah, there's a pre-lock show tomorrow. Hang on, I'm pulling it up here. So here's
the schedule for the week.
There it is. Look at it. You're more prepared. You guys got everything right on here. Yeah. So we've got the 7:00 show tonight. Monday, there'll be stuff, a premium and a free show. Make sure to tune in for all that stuff on RotoGrinders. Again, thanks to FanDuel for sponsoring the show. If you are not a sportsbook user of theirs, if you bet $5, you can get a $150 bet, regardless of if your team wins or loses. And go check out Scores and Odds if you want to sweat games. It's a great app to track games too. For live scoring, not just getting the best odds on anything or good picks. Go check out Scores and Odds. And I think that's it for Justin and Tim. I'm Britt. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we out you.